Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting of the Transportation Board of the Town of Brookline to order at 6:31 p.m. on the 24th of April, 2024. That is a palindrome, which is very exciting. Thank you all for being here. I don't have my agenda in front of me. Is public comment our first item?
Let me pull up the agenda right here.
I need to pull up mine as well.
Yep, public comment before the
Okay.
consent agenda.
So we will move on to public comment. If there is an item that is not on the agenda that you would like to comment to the board on, you can use the raise hand function and we would be delighted to elevate you to panelist and you can make your comment. If you want to comment on an item that is on the agenda, please note that we will take specific comments on each item as we get there, as long as somebody reminds me to do so. There are currently 12 attendees and I don't see lots of hands jumping up. So I'm going to assume that this is not, nobody wants to comment at this time. So we'll close public comment and we will move on to the consent agenda now. Hi, everybody. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any member of the board would like to have removed and discussed in detail?
This month, we are just approving the April minutes from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Does anyone have any changes or edits that they'd like to see?
No, and I wasn't at the last meeting, so I will be abstaining, but that doesn't mean we can't vote. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes of the April 10th meeting and with it the consent agenda?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Leonard. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sam, you want to call the roll?
Len?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Shanali?
Yes.
And Brian?
I'll abstain. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, no, Sam, thank you. We are now on to item 4, which is member update. Is there any member that would like to update the board on anything? I have a few things, but we'll wait till we get to those items in particular to discuss. Len, any exciting stuff at town meeting that we should be really excited about?
Not that I know of.
I mean, town meeting in and of itself is incredibly exciting, so we have that, but
You're
nothing
just gonna have to
specific.
wait for the actual town meeting, Brian.
I can't wait. It's palpable. Okay. DPW update. This is a very exciting DPW update because we get to welcome a gentleman that I got to meet the other day, Mr. Dan Murphy. Dan, we are so grateful that you're here. Welcome, and the floor is yours, sir.
Just want to say hello and thanks for having me. And I'm real excited to be in Brookline, and I'm understanding how great the staff we have available here. A great resource. And I look forward to working with the board and the Pet Advisory Committee and anybody else in town to help get projects done and make the street safer.
Thank you, Dan. Dan comes to us from Western Massachusetts, where he had a long and distinguished career, and we look forward to working with you. And I know this is week 1 or 2, so there's a lot. It's you're drinking from the fire hose, metaphorically, but we're so grateful that you're here, and I know each of the board members will look forward to meeting you in person very soon.
Great, thank you.
Is there anything else on the DPW update?
The DPW update is identical to the 10th, except Shanali, I hope you were able to look through the Davis footbridge update that Will Smith very graciously provided. Gives a little bit of insight into where we are with that project and its relationship with some of the other grants that we're going for.
Yeah, we didn't get the grant. That's a bummer, huh?
Yeah, that's a bummer.
I did have a question on the DPW update. Just confirming we're planning on a May Washington Street meeting, DRC meeting.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
We are going to briefly, as in, I think by Monday of next week at the latest, be sharing the next 4 DRC meeting dates. So people can plan ahead. We're hoping that 4 will take us through the project. So those are going to be planned for May, June, August, and October, I think, but I'll double check those dates.
I just wanted to specify for anyone on the call that didn't know, Dan Murphy is the new director for engineering and transportation, just in case they're wondering.
Sorry.
No worries.
Dan is the new demigod of all things transportation. Okay. Any other questions on the DPW update? If not, we are just, let's see, how are we doing for time here? We're okay. All right.
Sorry, one more thing that's just coming to mind that I had declined to participate on the open space committee planning thing. Do we have somebody else that's doing that?
I was going to talk about that later on,
Okay.
but since you brought it up, we are seeking volunteers to serve on the Open Space Master Plan Committee. Representatives of each board and commission are asked to serve, and you get to work with the amazing Mr. Tom Brady on all things open space. It's very cool. And I can send anybody more information that is interested, but think about it, and the transportation board should be represented. Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 6. Item 6 is, I found my agenda, by the way. Discussion and action on the appointment of 2 new members to the Shared Mobility Advisory Committee. This is very exciting. I was able to meet with these 2 gentlemen, Eric Stone and Dave Porter. Oh, hi, Eric. Eric is a town meeting member from precinct somewhere. I have to look.
Fighting 8th.
The Fighting 8th, and Dave is actually on the ballot for 6. These 2 gentlemen have very good qualifications and are very eager to try to reinvigorate the Shared Mobility Advisory Committee. So we met a couple weeks ago. We talked about kind of a vision and an approach for SMAC, and kind of engaging a lot more on T stuff, especially with the MBTA looking to redo the C branch of the Green Line on Beacon Street, in consultation with the Bridle Path. There's just a lot of coordination, and not necessarily coordination in terms of projects, but coordination in terms of vision and policy that we need. And I really see the shared mobility folks as the vehicle to do that, no pun intended. And there's also a ton of stuff that we can do on bus stops, on bus, public transportation bus improvements. Eric and Dave both bring a real data-driven approach, and the ability to take incredible amounts of information and make them work and make them make sense. And it's a really especially important set of tools that we haven't really had in a while. And I know that they, in consultation with the other folks on shared mobility, will do a great job. And I look forward to working with them individually. The predecessor to the predecessor of SMAC was something I started when I was on this board for the first iteration, and it's a little near and dear to my heart. So I'm very grateful that Eric and Dave are willing to step up. And Eric, you look like a podcaster. Do you want to say a few words from your podcasting studio there?
Oh, sure. I'll be brief. I know we've got a lot on the agenda, and I'm excited about particularly the traffic calming updates. I will say, I'm a data scientist, so I sort of apply the statistics lens to everything. I try to be data driven in how I think about stuff. I'm also an executive at a startup, so I have experience managing people and managing projects. So I'm hopeful that I can apply both of those sets of experience to reinvigorating SMAC and doing some good stuff with the T and bus stops and ever more shared mobility projects with y'all. So excited there. And then I guess I'll add, you know, my first dabble into Brookline politics, which led me to town meeting and has led me to this, was analyzing traffic on my street, which is Beale Street, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and writing up a little report of the distributions of that and bringing it to this committee so that sort of it feels like a little bit of a nice culmination of getting started, and it feels good to be participating. So I'll shut up there.
Thank you, Eric. No need to shut up. We need more data-driven approaches, not fewer. And I just on a note, I've spoken to Johanna Epke. She will continue to serve. And we need to, Jane Gould is currently, her term has not yet expired. So we'll have to get in touch with Julie and just figure out what the situation there is, and if we can get everybody reappointed for terms, and let everybody get up and running, and then I will sort of work with SMAC to get it up and running as best as I can, and then look forward to working with you folks and hearing all you improvements and suggestions and other good stuff that you have for us. So thank you for serving. Any questions for Eric? Okay, comments? Any public comments on the appointment of Eric or Dave? If you are opposed to folks volunteering, well, I guess you're welcome to speak, but okay. I don't see anybody. So with that, back to my agenda. Look at the language. Who has anybody have the language in front of them? I have too many tabs open on my computer currently.
I have the language. The recommendation is the transportation division staff recommend that the transportation board vote to appoint Dave Porter and Eric Stone to the Shared Mobility Advisory Committee for a term starting immediately and expiring June 1st of 2027.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I'll take that as a movement from Len and a second from Jonathan. Sam, you want to call the roll, please?
Len,
Yes.
Shanali,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Dave. Thank you all, and to all of our advisory committee volunteers. Thank you. We don't say it enough how grateful we are for all that you do. And look forward to working with you, Eric, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Item 7. Let's see. It's 7. Item 7 is scheduled for 7 p.m. and it's 6:44. So we are good. Discussion and action on the MBTA bus stop relocation and safety improvements for the Brookline Avenue at Aspen Wall Avenue location. Who's got this item?
I'll be taking this item. We're still waiting for the MBTA representatives and their consultant from WSP to join.
Okay.
Ben just joined. I'll be promoting them to panelist.
Great.
And I see Greg as well.
Perfect timing.
Is it Greg Strangeways?
Greg Skiba.
I used to work with Greg Strangeways. I was going to give him a hard time. So maybe
Still
I'll
can.
give Greg Skiba a hard time.
Yeah, I was going to say still can.
And then they're going to be talking about, oh good, Ben just unmuted.
Hi, guys.
Good evening.
You hear me? Good evening, guys.
Yes.
So
Thanks for being
looks
here.
like we are a little bit earlier today.
That's how we run in Brookline. Early is
Okay.
on time is late, and late is unacceptable.
Okay, we are lucky to be here. So we want to share our PPT. So give us some times.
Yeah, Ben, I'll go ahead and start sharing.
Okay, great, Greg. Thank you.
Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good evening, guys. Good evening, chairs and board members. My name is Binzu, a project manager from MBTA. So tonight we are very happy to be here to introduce with our design consultant WSP to introduce our patty project that we will plan to do in town of Brookline. So Greg, next page. Yeah, so the purpose of the plan for the accessible transit infrastructure patty project is to create the ADA compliant bus stop in MBTA system-wide for our customers who have different mobility needs and improve the customer safety. I think since the 1990s, so all the municipality and agency are required to upgrade the pedestrian infrastructure to meet the ADA requirements. The background is disability advocate brought a lawsuit against the MBTA to provide ADA compliance to the mass transit across our system. So improvement of the bus stop system-wide is a part of the settlement agreement. The bus stop in town of Brookline have been our prioritized for design in this year due to the one or more major access barriers. So as the bus stop improvement, the bus stop improvement scope will be include the improvement of the sidewalk, creation the crosswalk, ADA compliant curbs, and the bus stop signs. So the MBTA will be submit all the plans. So actually, this is a redesign plans to the town for review during our design process. So on our when the design finished, our on-call contractor will be construct the bus stop. So far, we estimate we invest in $475,000 for this bus stop location in town of Brookline. MBTA, the fund is funded by the state bonding, federal fundings to perform this work. Next slide. Okay, so next page, I would like to turn it over to our PM and senior civil engineers from the WSP, Greg Skiba, to introduce the design concept.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you all for having us tonight. So I don't have too many slides here, so feel free to interject if you have any questions, but happy to take questions at the end. So as Ben mentioned, we have two locations in Brookline that we're currently working on. One of which, Lee at Warren Street, has actually been substantially completed in construction. They're just turning over some RFB equipment to the town, rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And there is some new curb ramps and crosswalks and an RFB installed at that location. What we're primarily focusing on tonight is the location at Brookline Ave and Aspinwall Avenue. So there's pretty similarly, and I'll show you a plan shortly. We'll be installing new curb ramps and crosswalks. Currently, the bus stop on that northbound direction is located between the crosswalks. So we're relocating that to the far side of the intersection. And we've revised the access and maintained that access to the shared use path on either side of that sidewalk. So this is just a street view from Google of that existing bus stop location. You can see an existing shelter there, which we'll be relocating, and I'll show you in the next slide where. But this is currently where those buses stop and those passengers board and get off the bus. So this is a slide showing our current design. You know, we've moved, as you can see, that bus stop northbound to the far side of the intersection. This just creates a safer, safer situation for everyone, for the buses, the riders, the people getting off the bus, trying to cross that crosswalk to the other side of Brookline Ave. It's less potential conflict points for people entering and accessing that shared use path, whether it's by walking or on the bicycle. And it creates just a safer queuing space for those passengers to board that bus. So just to go over a few of these bullet points, I've stated already, we're relocating that to the far side. The landing area is actually now directly where they would board the bus, where prior to this, it was located in the middle of that bus stop area. So we've relocated the shelter to this new landing area. If you see my mouse down here, and I'm happy to pull up a plan of this and zoom in to certain areas if you'd like. We've maintained that access to the shared use path, keeping at least a 5-foot minimum clearance at the entrance of that, and widening actually as it gets closer to the actual shared use path.
Greg, will the stop itself be a landing pad, or how do you propose to grade that?
So yeah, let me, if you don't mind, I'll just switch gears real quick to Bluebeam, and I'll show
No
you
problem.
real quick if you can still see my screen.
Yeah.
Great. So this will actually be kind of like a short cheek wall, similar to what you would see. I'll just zoom back here. If you see behind the existing shelter, it'll be a similar type, not necessarily a retaining wall, but a taller curb that we've installed on numerous projects as part of this PADI contract to kind of hold back a little bit more grade, because as you may know, the shared use path is a little higher than the sidewalk. So our current plan, you can kind of see it here, is to put this kind of back cheek wall.
Greg, we can't see Bluebeam if Bluebeam is open.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shared the PowerPoint. Let me share my screen instead. Apologies. How about now? Nope, wrong screen. There we go.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. So just zooming in here, you can see this back cheek wall, and then grading. We'll grade up with loam and seed, retain the existing landscaping in between the shared use path and the back of that shelter and small wall.
Grading of the sidewalk itself will be. Will the sidewalk get reconstructed? I'm just trying to figure out what's going to go on at the actual stop location.
Yeah, so this is actually all new sidewalk. So we're currently proposing a new sidewalk construction. We are constrained by ADA requirements, so there is cross slope standards we have to go by for that for those sidewalks. So, but we'll take as much as we can get in order to make this difference up here as small as we can.
Okay.
But it will be an ADA compliant bus stop, 1.5% cross slope maximum. So I'll just hop back to the presentation and wrap this up quickly. A couple more bullet points. The existing traffic signal equipment will remain, and the existing curb ramps that are there now to these crosswalks, except for this one on the northwest of the intersection. These three are all currently ADA compliant. So the only one we're actually replacing is the one on this corner. Just to touch real quick on Lee and Warren Street, this was the plan, and like I mentioned, it's already been substantially completed. We're just turning over that RFB equipment. So the design has been completed to an 100% level, permitting also completed. I didn't put my info in here, but I can send that along if needed, but feel free to contact and go through Ben. His number is shown here. And then for the construction season, we do have an on-call contractor, like Ben mentioned, approximately 4 to 6 weeks per location typically. And we do have a contact for during construction if you'd like to get in touch with Abdul as well. Flyers are typically posted 2 weeks prior to all construction activities. And unless Ben, I'm missing anything, I'll open the
Nope.
floor up to any more questions.
Great, thank you. Just a general question, I guess, Ben and Greg and anybody else. So, I mean, I'm very familiar with the Patty program, and Laura Brailsford does great work, and she deserves a medal. But you selected sort of 2 bus stops out of possibly out of dozens, at least in Brookline. So, why these 2, and what else can we do to encourage you to look at other stops?
Yeah, so right now I'm thinking we are focused. MBTA performs the PATI program is by phase. So we focus on the critical stop first, and then critical stop means very dangerous, and then it's unsafe for pedestrian use. So right now, based on our strategy, we focus on the critical stop and then high priority stop. We already investigate and survey all the system-wide 8,000 stop. So we divide by 4 categories: critical, high priority, medium stop, and low priority stop. So I think except these 2 stop, we perform other critical stop in Brookline in last 3 years. So maybe later I can share with you guys what stop we already performed. So, but this is our strategy.
Yeah, is it based on sort of boardings and lightings and access to sort of critical functions, or what goes into the criteria for selection, I guess is the question.
Oh, the critical stop means it's unsafe. Pedestrian cannot use and totally unsafe. We want to address high priority. Maybe it's a 1 or 2, maybe access a barrier, and then we want to also to address. So this is the first 2 category we want to address first.
That's great. No, it's great, and I'm very grateful to the authority for doing this. And obviously, we want to encourage making all of our stops accessible.
Yeah.
Everywhere. So thank you, Jonathan. I see your hand is up. Go ahead, good sir.
Hi there. Got a couple questions. The first one's to our own fine transportation staff. I know we've been fooling around with plans for Brookline Ave. Has this been reviewed in conjunction with that? Is it compatible?
It is compatible. The main thing with the Brookline Ave plans, the concept is to have a northbound bus priority lane that would remove the parking. So in this case, the parking would just be removed around it, and the bus lane could still be within the bus priority lane itself. And then in the other direction, heading southbound, that area now where the bus is proposed would become a 2-way cycle track to connect people to Parkway Road that are coming from the shared use path at Aspinwall Ave. In that case, the bus stop would move to the far side of the intersection. So although we're doing work here, that the bus would be shifted later if Brookline Ave were to move forward in its current design. But the work they're doing does fix the sidewalk, which is non-compliant. So it's not wasted money because we're fixing that area now. Right now, the cross slope is over 3%.
Oh, that conveniently lined up with my next. Thank you for that. But that lined up for my next question on why is the plan to leave this near side for a reason on southbound?
Yeah, so like I just said, it was considered to be moved far side, but in regards to the future project that installed a bike lane, we figured that it may be impacted in the future, so it might actually be more of a create more of an impact in the future if we were to move it far side, and we would need to replace that holding perhaps. So we figured we could correct the non-standard grades in this corner and just repair the stop in its current location and at least address those non-standard.
Okay, so there's no real like operations benefit right now for moving it far side. It's really make it accessible and safe.
Yeah,
project.
this is also in
Okay.
conjunction. This is also improve the pedestrian cross the sidewalk to the safety. So make sure the bus drivers can see the pedestrians.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then one more question? Two more questions here. So the new path up to the Muddy River path. It looks like it's 5 feet, and then it might actually angle a little bit there. Does it ever get less? It does not get less than 5 feet. Okay. It's right at that point. Cool. Okay, and that doesn't connect to DCR property at all? There's no like DCR issues here?
Nope, that's a town-owned path.
There's always DCR
Okay,
issues, Jonathan.
Here. I just wanted to make sure because green stuff is often. And the traffic signals that are there, they're all remaining the way they are.
Correct.
No changes. Yeah.
And there's no requirement to upgrade the pedestrian signal push buttons with the bus program at all.
They are APS buttons, so they have the audible tone and they vibrate, and we have the countdown timers in place.
Okay, it's all up to date. Okay, great. That's everything I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shanali.
Can you just clarify for me what this does to the traffic lanes? Because there's no painted bus stop there now, right? So
Existing, it's 3 meter parking spaces, so we're taking out those 3 meters and going to be painting it as a bus lane.
okay, so there's I think 2 lanes in each direction, right? So those are just untouched.
Yep, you can see the broken white lane line. Those are going to stay in place.
Okay. And then just out of curiosity, do we know of the things that meet the critical level, the stops? Do we know how many of those total are in Brookline that are already done and how many are in the future still that meet that criteria?
Yeah, I can. Right now, I don't have a numbers for total stop in Brookline, but I would like to share with you guys. So maybe after this call tomorrow morning for the how many total stop, how many we performed.
So Shanali, if I could just follow up on that, I'd like to invite you guys to talk to our Shared Mobility Advisory Committee, which we just reappointed. And I'm sure they would love to get a full briefing on sort of what's been done and what might be planned in the future. So through Dan and Sam and Amy and everybody, we'll follow up with you on that, and we'll try to get that scheduled for sometime in the summer.
Yeah, Brian, I also want to point out Patty stop will be keep going. So we plan, another 5-year CIP. So I'm thinking, Patty program will be keep to address high priority and media stop, including the Brookline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Is this an action item?
Yep, the recommendation is to approve
7.
approve the MBTA bus stop relocation as presented.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
Brian, we should just ask public comment.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm glad you're here, Sam. What would I do without you? Yes, we would love to invite the public to comment. Thank you, Sam, on this item. I see 20. You can use the raise hand function, and you will be elevated to panelist, and we will be delighted to hear your comments or ask your question if you are if you so choose. I see 21 attendees, and I don't see a lot of hands popping up. David, I was waiting for you. David Trevette has raised his hand. Let's elevate David, please. In the meantime, yeah, like I said, Ben and Greg and everybody on Patty, it's a great program. I've actually worked with it for a lot of years in my day job, so we're very supportive of it in general. And love to have you get more involved with the folks that we have advising us on this stuff more in general. One of the people who advises us on such matters is David Trevette. And David, I would love to hear your take on this, please.
David Trevette, Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, speaking myself. I don't want to make a big deal about this, but I know that in general, across the board, we're trying to move bus stops to the far side of intersections. The fact is that a stopped bus does in some way hinder a full view of what's going on in the intersection at a green, and so we have all these crosswalks, and granted, when traffic is moving down the street, and that's why I'm not making a big deal of it, there's not going to be people coming across Brookline Avenue, which would be the primary concern. So it's not a big deal, but it's just a caution. So as we go forward, in general, we're trying to move bus stops to a far side of intersections for better visibility into what's happening at the intersection. I just wanted to make that point as a reminder to everyone. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And couldn't agree more. That is definitely our preference, and for a lot of reasons, and something we need to improve. Jonathan.
Just one more quick thing, and I recall that it's our policy at intersections to not have ladder crosswalks. Was this intended because of some sort of visibility issue at this intersection, or is that just something the MBTA has been doing?
I think we've been moving towards more ladders for increased visibility. So I think that's why the MBTA chose to paint the ladders. It is still our crosswalk.
I'm certainly not against it.
Yeah. Our
I
own
would prefer
policies.
it. So it's a lot more. It's a lot more paint. That's paint, that's all.
Our internal policies have not been updated yet, but I'd say this is an improvement.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone, have you seen the meme, Jonathan, of I think it's a crosswalk in Seattle where someone facetiously placed a bin full of bricks, and there's a sign that says "Grab a brick and make eye contact as you cross."
David Trevette kindly shared that with our group. I had seen it on April Fool's. I saw it on April Fool's Day, and could not refrain from chuckling at it. So
I thought you might be suggesting that, Jonathan, but we don't want brick throwing. Don't want brick throwing.
Maybe another day.
Only metaphorical bricks.
Maybe if you had been here for last meeting, that might have been suggested.
Brian, we have 2 more hands raised. Should I elevate them?
Oh, please. Thank you. I can't see everybody. Yeah, let's have Linda Olson-Pelkey and Todd McFadden elevated, please. Linda, once you come out of the ether, you can turn your camera on, unmute, make your comment, and welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Nice to see you. I am here for a later agenda item, but of course I look at this long enough, I'll come up with the question. So my question is about the access to the shared use path and why is it here? I mean, what's the thinking behind needing to have the access point there? Because people are simply, is it to accommodate people who cross and then get onto the path there? Or what are we assuming about why it's here?
I think it's for folks that cross from Aspinwall, but I will let the experts answer that.
Yeah, and this is actually the existing access. So we're basically putting it back and widening it once it actually reaches the path. So yeah, to Brian's point right there, there's one on each side. You can see the other one continuing to the left here, and it's for those users crossing the street or perhaps getting off at this bus stop location.
And so they are partially on the sidewalk for a short while?
Well, they traverse the sidewalk to
Yeah.
get to the shared use path, yes.
Yeah. And my only other question is, could someone explain what's happening where the existing bus stop is now? It is simply being removed, but there was that grade issue, so
So we're relocating that existing shelter to the new location, and we'll be replacing the sidewalk panels with new concrete sidewalk. The existing back a curb will be replaced with the proposed curb, just based on condition, and make sure the grade issue is also covered in between with new loam and seed.
okay, thanks. And the sidewalk you said is new on the bus stop side. Is it continue there, or are people expected to be walking on the shared use path?
This is all one
Yeah,
wide.
but I mean to the east of the bus stop. Keep going, or north, or whatever direction this is.
So the sidewalk currently sort of merges into the shared use path. So
Right.
there's not a standalone sidewalk on that side. Are you asking if we're going to
Yes.
extend the sidewalk on Brookline Ave?
Yes.
So I think the T's responsibility is the bus stop, give or take 5 feet on either side. It would really be up to the town to expand the sidewalk. It's something we probably should do and look at. And as part of our traffic calming policy that we're going to take up later in this meeting, we actually discuss things like that. So I would invite you to hold that until we get there,
Okay.
unless anybody wants to give an answer.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Linda.
you.
And I see Todd McFadden has his hand up.
I did promote him to panelist and he declined. Let's see.
Okay. Okay, Todd, your hand is up. If you want to speak, you
Sorry.
need to accept the invitation.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you.
All right,
Welcome.
great. Hey, thank you. My question is related to the comment from David about the bus preferably being on the far side of an intersection. And so on the outbound lane, maybe I missed this, but why isn't the bus stop being put on the opposite side of that intersection?
Well, yeah, this was brought up, and I understand that there is a future project that we're going to look at reconfiguring that entire side of the street. So it just didn't make sense to kind of move it and then kind of dig it up pretty soon thereafter. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. That's great. Thanks.
Nope, no problem. Good question. Good question. And does anyone else have any questions or comments from the public? I see we now have 23 attendees. Okay, I don't see any hands jumping up, so I'll consider the public comment period for this item to be closed. And let me find my agenda. Okay. Any final questions from the board? Comments, concerns? Okay. So the staff recommendation is that we vote to approve the MBTA bus stop relocation as presented. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Shanali. Is there a second?
Second.
We'll take that from Nancy. And can someone please call the roll?
Len,
Finale. Nope.
Yes.
Just one.
Shanali, Brian,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Sorry, Dan.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Thank you, guys.
We look forward to a lot more of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 8. I just want to pull up the agenda to make sure that we are within our time constraint. Item 8 was 7:20 and it's now 7:15, so we are within our buffer. Okay, so this is a discussion and action on the proposed bicycle improvements on Lee and Clyde Streets between Newton Street and Route 9 to reduce travel lane widths and add a painted buffer and delineator posts to the existing bicycle lane. Take it away, Dan.
I got this one. So good evening, everyone. I'm excited for the conversation that we're about to about to embark on together. This pilot started at the end of 2023. It was a conversation had internally and brought for discussion to the board that there was a call to us to create a better connection between South Brookline and North Brookline to be accessible by bicycle. Currently, Lee and Clyde was one of the recent roads that was voted 2 years ago to be reduced from a 35-mile-an-hour road to a 25-mile-an-hour road as part of the great efforts by this board. And for at least the last decade, in 2014, actually exactly, was when this road was striped and has had a bicycle lane in both directions and 2 travel lanes, both north and south, between Newton Street and Route 9. So what our division did was operate a pilot to determine the feasibility and operation of flex posts and creating a protected bike lane on Lee and Clyde during snow operations. We all, not we all, but many of us are familiar with the benefits of adding a physical barrier between a bike lane and the travel lane, and how that makes bicyclists feel in terms of safety, and also drivers being aware that there is a bike lane, which has, like I said, existed for the last 10 years. As part of our pilot, we created a Google form that was shared multiple times across a number of platforms, ranging from the South Brookline neighborhood group, the listserv, Facebook, the town meeting member listserv emails that's updated with the select board, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. We shared it across all forums to collect feedback on the pilot. Based off the feedback received, and you can see that as part of the attachment today, the only thing that's been removed is the email addresses that they were submitted by to not provide personal information. But otherwise, all other information is available for the 239 responses that were received. As part of the memo, you can see a summary of the responses. Obviously, the percentages are important, but so are the comments that were shared as part of the Google form. It was quite resounding, and I'll say resounding by meaning the majority of people highlighted the need for reduced speeds on Lee and Clyde Street, and also the desire to have safer bike conditions and safer driving conditions. People highlighted that as part of our pilot, we did need 5 feet of space between the curb and the location of the flex post in order to perform snow operations during the winter. And at points, there was inconsistent spacing between posts and periods of posts actually being on the left-hand side of the shoulder or the bike lane, and that was causing some distress to drivers. So going next step here, we are proposing that the current layout of the street, which I'll share my screen now because Street Mix is a beautiful thing, and everyone should use it because it's fun. So in the memo, you can see that the existing layout of Lee and Clyde Street is a 5-foot bike lane in both the north and south direction, accompanied by 2 11-foot travel lanes. Our recommendation to the board tonight is to restripe the road for 2 10-foot travel lanes. So there are no travel lanes being removed. They will be narrowed, and using the 2 feet and reallocating it to form a painted buffer, which would mean that the flex post could go back in the same location that they previously were, except now we would have a painted buffer on the street that would provide additional space between the travel lane and the bike lane, and therefore would both reduce speeds of vehicles. We know the effects of narrowing of lanes on vehicle speeds, and we also know how protected bike lanes make bicyclists feel. So we see this as a way to connect South and North Brookline. Obviously, there's still more pieces of this puzzle to be completed, but we see this as a major step in allowing students to bike to all areas of North Brookline and feel safer doing it, kids and adults. And I'm happy to take questions and from the board and the public about their feelings about this proposal, but this is something that we really see as being impactful on safety for all users, both drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate your efforts here. I look forward to hearing from folks. I did want to note that we received substantial public comments on this, which were provided, emails, et cetera, et cetera. So that's your comments are much appreciated. So I drive Lee and Clyde a lot, mostly taking my kids to soccer practice up at Skyline. And I try to drive 25. And cars are just flying past me. So, you know, I've said before that if we're going to have speed limits that mean something, we have to use design to slow down cars. So I don't see this as a bike project at all. I did do the south from Baker to Brookline High bike ride last fall with Richard Murphy, who's here, and a bunch of BHS students. And it was terrifying to ride on this segment of the road. But for me, this isn't a bike project. It's about slowing down traffic. And I keep saying that we need to slow down cars. It makes it safer for everybody, including other drivers. And you know, so for me, this isn't a bike project. It's a slowing down cars and making it safer for everybody, including folks who live around there. But that's just me. Let's hear from other folks. Nancy, I see your hand.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I noticed from some of the recent comments that we received that several people had questions or concerns about snow removal and the effect of the bollards on the ability to clear the bike lanes and, of course, from curb to curb. So what do we know about the effect of these changes, particularly the bollards, on snow removal?
So based off of the pilot and snow operations this past winter, it was possible to clear snow. However, in coordination with the highway department and given current staffing and plow, we would have to use a sidewalk plow to clear the lane. We've agreed that this vote, if successful, would be for essentially a seasonal bike lane. So as soon as the first snow is expected in the winter, all bollards that are installed are able to be unscrewed. So this would not be a year-round bike lane. And as soon as the spring is, on the horizon, the post would be reinstalled. So the posts easily unscrew. And so our highway staff and the director of highway, Kevin Johnson, has committed to leaving them in for as long as possible. But as soon as that first snow does arrive, we would remove them. But of course, we still have the 2-foot buffer and narrower lanes.
And
the
not
other
protected
question,
for year round, right? Still a bike lane year round, just not protected year round.
Yeah, sorry if that wasn't clear. I just meant
Yeah.
it's just not a protect. Yeah, we would just remove the bollards.
okay, yeah. So in assessing the success of the pilot, so the question is, what are the measures of success? So you've mentioned, that the response from the public was in favor of this, but are there any data drivers of success? So a couple of people said bikers aren't using these lanes. So if there's no, it's increase in the number of bicycles that are using it, that could be a measure as to whether or not it's worth it. Traffic, if is traffic being calmed? Some people said, well, they didn't think that drivers were changing their speeds. And And just another comment on that in terms of Brian's comment is, you know, if this is traffic, if the purpose of this is traffic calming, then I'm wondering did staff view it in that sense in which you have, we know from the draft policy that we're going to be talking about later, that if your goal is primarily traffic calming rather than a bike lane, then you have a whole series of different tools at your disposal. So I think we ought to be clear about what exactly the goal is, and to the extent that it's traffic calming, is this the best way to achieve that end? And does it matter whether whether there's a significant increase in the number of bicyclists that are using the road? Does that matter? Does anyone, is that relevant in assessing success?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the questions. I'll try to answer them all, and please let me know if I miss one. But I think that as Brian mentioned, I would personally say that this is more a dual purpose project. I wouldn't, it's hard to assign weight to one priority over the other, because it is something that would achieve a dual purpose of both decreasing vehicle speeds and increasing the safety of bicyclists on this road. The reality was that the pilot, although in place for a number of months, did lose a number of flex posts because, unfortunately, people, certain people chose to just drive right over them. And again, they're flex posts, but like in one day we lost 20 flex posts because someone decided to take their truck and drive over all of them. And so it's really difficult to, evaluate success when the posts were physically removed. However, there were sections of the road where the posts remained, and the data that we have is from the form indicating how it, it's more qualitative data of how it made people feel when they're biking. And that's just reflective of what would happen if this was put in place permanently. Like the phrase that I actually heard from our new director, Dan, say earlier, build it and they will come, right? Like this is an effort that needs to be, taken seriously in terms of provide someone with a safe biking accommodation, and it will be used. And similarly to Brian's testament to how he felt when he was biking on Lee and Clyde, I feel similarly. Like I'm a road, a cyclist, and I didn't feel safe on Lee and Clyde. Cars are going really fast. So it really is a dual purpose benefit if we really want to, split it 50-50 between just improving safety for all. And then data, I mean, we don't have, turning movement counts or something that was done during the pilot, but we have a lot of observational data of going out there. And, I spent many hours watching, and yes, I did see a number of bicyclists. I didn't count how many bicyclists there were, but it was great to see people using the protected bike lane and getting responses from people saying that it made them feel safer. That's the data that we have for this pilot. Did I miss a question? Thanks, Nancy. Jonathan, sorry.
Yeah, I have two questions. So there are large sections of Lee and Clyde that have missing sidewalk. Is that being added as well as part of this?
This would not be part of this project, but the town is working, it's a parallel effort, right, of restoring the sidewalks that are in poor condition already, and also identifying our disconnects in our network. So, we do work to identify those locations, but new sidewalks would not be a part of this project.
Okay. And then there's a 1 foot shoulder on the median. Is that getting removed as well?
It does vary along the length of Lee and Clyde. And so the numbers that I installed here, the numbers that were inputted here were basically the bare minimum. And so if there was additional space that could be utilized, we would provide that to the buffer and keep the 10-foot lanes consistent throughout that segment of road.
But there'll still be a yellow line along the median.
There will still be a yellow line. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And then I just want to voice my concern about I understand the maintenance needs of the wintertime and the snow removal, but before the meeting I did a street view run of this from prior to when the bike lane was there but the posts aren't in, and I counted at least 6 or 7 vehicles that were parked in the bike lane.
So oh, sorry, I apologize.
Oh, I was just going to say that, even if it's at best, we're talking December, January, February, March, and you probably wouldn't put them back until April. So that's a third of the year, or a quarter of the year that the bike lanes wouldn't be protected. So 25% of the time, there could be vehicles parked in there, and more often than not, they might be.
That's true. And we have communicated with Brookline Police, and this needs to be a collaborative effort between us and them. I don't want to speak for David Trevette, but I will try. He is working with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee's police representative to identify a better way for reports of illegally parked vehicles, whether that be on a sidewalk or in a bike lane, as part of our Brook Online process. And so we know that, it's in our traffic rules and regulations. I was just reviewing it before this meeting. One of the bullet points is that it is illegal to park in a bike lane, right? And so we need to work with police to remind people that this has been a bike lane for over 10 years, and there has never been and will continue to not be parking regardless of whether or not this item gets approved or not going forward.
I also just want to add that if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. We've been through all of this. We've been in discussion with Kevin and staff that actually do the snow removal, and knowing that this does seem to be something that's changing, the amount of snow we're getting each year. We've barely gotten anything this past year. So we're aware of the implications of it being a seasonal protected bike lane. And I think that we are willing to have conversations to kind of move that needle as we see fit. Maybe we don't take it out until we know a big storm is coming, rather than just taking it out in November just because I don't know, I've lived here 10 years and I don't think I've ever seen a real snow event in November. So yeah, this isn't going to be forever. We're trying to be flexible with it. And we want to move towards making it a permanent fixture.
And as I said, snow operations actually were successful this last year. Again, we didn't have any major storm events, but the sidewalk plow did successfevely remove what might have just been a 3-inch storm event, but that still indicates that it's possible. So Kevin, like Amy said, is committed, and we're committed to working with him to keep them in as long as possible.
Okay. I guess I just want to ask a couple more questions related to that as alternatives. I know it would be a lot of paint, but is there any opportunity to include green paint along the lane, or is that just not feasible given the length of the project?
I think that conflict markings across cross streets is something that we will cost out and see if we can accommodate it. We don't have funding allocated specifically for this restriping effort if it is approved. So we would be looking at what near-term grant opportunities we could utilize, whether it's a Safe Streets for All or whether it's a shared streets and spaces grant. Like, there are all sorts of opportunities that we would pursue. And we definitely would include a request for green conflict paint at the cross streets on either side.
Okay. And then I don't know how much we've explored like lower, more permanent posts or barriers from flex posts. but maybe that's something that could stay in place if it was more like a like something that was lower, or does that have the same issues as the flex post was?
So I think I hear you, and someone else, one of the public comments did, provide a similar question of like, could we use low concrete barriers or something? And so it does again pose the same maintenance question. And again, it's a conversation we're willing to keep fluid with the highway department, but in the short term, our recommendation would still be for the flex post, just because they could be so easily unscrewed and put back in as we try to explore, making these improvements elsewhere while balancing snow operations and street cleaning.
Yeah, I was asking that one specifically because you said that 20 of them got taken out in a day, and it seems like that's a tough thing to keep maintaining over the long run, especially if we're paying for it with with grant money.
It is. I would hope that what I would consider to be like a targeted incident does not reoccur, but it was very apparent that this was someone who just took their truck and drove over all of them in a 20-minute period, 15-minute period. They also were spaced out at a larger distance than we would propose going forward, because the request had come from the highway department, again, because we were trying to explore how snow operations worked. They had asked for 100-foot spacing between them. We would reduce that as part of this effort. And so more consistent spacing would most definitely reduce that feeling that drivers, the inconsistency of it. They'd be more aware of the posts. And then also, like I said, some of the posts were not in a location suitable, like in relation to the lane, and therefore were more prone to be hit. So we'd hope that given this space, it has a better shot at life.
I think a lot of neighboring communities have gone through some of these. I mean, honestly, growing pains with the flex posts. They're not perfect for separating bike lanes, but a lot of communities have tried other things, and there's been some mixed results, to be perfectly honest. But also, a lot of these communities that used to have these problems with the flex posts just getting beat up are now, have flex posts all over the place, and people have gotten used to them. So I think some of this is just, us getting used to something a little different.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how many flex posts do we go through? Do we know how many flex posts we go through in a year?
Across all the locations, or just on this?
Yeah, just in general. Yeah.
I would say that this pilot was an exception, because the ones that we have, like, for example, the ones that we recently put on Harvard Street, south of Beacon, in front of the UPS, have been, we did have to replace one of them, but that was a pretty, those took a beating, but it really did help develop a safer connection between Beacon Street and Longwood. And then the same for Harvard Street northbound. Like, I don't think those ones are much closer together, obviously, Harvard Street northbound, but I don't think we've lost any of those. And so the Lee and Clyde pilot, I think of the 50 that were installed, we probably lost 35. But the ones that we didn't lose were the ones that were at the beginning of the road that were really establishing the bike lane. And the ones that were lost were more likely to be on the street, like straightaways, where people just didn't care.
Yeah, are there like more reflective ones that can be placed at the beginning and end of the project? Is it more of a visual thing?
Well, we definitely have to stick with white posts and the yellow reflective paint. But again, I think it's just that visual of having a painted area that would provide a better lifespan for them, because people were not used to them being there. And you saw some of the quotes, people were caught off guard because that they were in a location where they wouldn't expect them to be. And so the hope would be that that reflective yellow and more consistent spacing would lead to a better outcome.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to run that down because it sounded like there was something there, but I guess we'll work with FlexPost for the 9 months a year, plus or minus, and hopefully longer. But everyone does like to see snow once in a while.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any other questions from the board? Okay, we're going to open it up to the public. I see there's already several hands raised. If you would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function and you will be elevated to panelist. The first hand up is Jeffrey Cook. So let's elevate Jeffrey, and let's also bring Sandy up. Jeffrey, welcome. You're elevated. Feel free to unmute, turn your camera on if you're comfortable, and comment away.
Mr. Kane?
We can hear you. Can't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm so sorry. There was a gap in the connection when you announced our names. I'm so sorry. So thank you so much for your time. And we apologize. We just didn't have the chance to submit this in writing. But my wife, Pam, and I are here, and we're homeowners of the Lee and Clyde area. We support the safety enhancements for the bikers, and we also really appreciated what you, Mr. Kane, said, and Ms. Moore's question earlier, and also what the recommendation expressly highlights, and that's traffic speed. We live here, and it's crazy dangerous. I mean, just on a daily basis. Even the recommendation from the DPW stated, that reduced speeds are a necessary change on Lee and Clyde streets, where drivers routinely travel 10 or more miles per hour above the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. It's just out of control. It's dangerous to bikers, but to lots of other Brookline constituents. The part of the recommendation that supposedly addresses traffic speed was purportedly narrowing the travel lanes by a foot. But we just weren't sure what the data or other basis was that a 1 foot narrowing of lanes will actually reduce speeds at all. We did a Google search earlier and we saw a Johns Hopkins study just from last year with the quote, narrow lanes alone don't reduce operating speeds. We saw a federal DOT report from 2015. The title of the report was, factors influencing operating speeds and safety on rural and suburban roads. That report noted that there was just a 0.4 to 1.1 mile per hour effect for every 1 foot difference in lane width. And that's the exact lane width that's being proposed here. It just does not seem that such a minimal speed reduction, say, for example, from 45 to 44 miles per hour, is really going to have an impact on safety. We think for the current proposal, it's good to provide a bike lane for bikers. And it was a great first step, which is so appreciated, to reduce the speed limit to 25. But Mr. Kane, as you said, cars are just flying down Lee and Clyde. And we really appreciated what you did with respect to the survey. But what we found alarming from that was that 46% of the respondents weren't even aware that the speed limit had been reduced from 35 to 25. Plus, there were several survey respondents who specifically wrote how cars are routinely driving, over 45 miles an hour, and how such speeds pose risk, not just to bikers, but to pedestrians, joggers, residents, and others. You've got pedestrians at risk because, as mentioned, as you mentioned earlier, there's parts of Lee that don't have a sidewalk. So that poses itself a lot of extra risks. With these bike lanes, in terms of, are there extra dangers for drivers that are trying to enter and exit driveways? When you have cars going at such high speeds and you have to try to get around or, maneuver with these different bike lanes, is that going to be even more dangerous? Again, when you're trying to get in and out of the driveways. Again, we totally agree with what you've all said and what the DPW recommendation says about the speed of cars needs to be addressed, but it just doesn't seem as though the current recommendation does that. As I said, the 25 mile per hour speed limit is a great first step, but cars constantly ignore it. And half of people aren't even aware of it per the survey. So we feel really strongly there needs to be enforcement of the new speed limit. Speeding tickets would be a great deterrent and could be a substantial source of revenue for the town. If you've got a 25 mile an hour speed zone and you've got cars going 45, 50 miles an hour, those could be big speeding tickets. And we also would appreciate any other measures that you might consider, such as, more permanent electronic speed signs, if there are other things such as speed bumps or one lane roads or anything else that you may consider. So we really appreciate your time, all of your efforts. Again, we apologize for not having been able to submit this in writing before, but we really appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate your taking the time tonight. Sandy, I believe, was next. Sandy, feel free to unmute, put your camera on if you're comfortable, and comment away.
Unmute.
Well, you were close. You just unmuted and then you muted back again. So just maybe press it once. Okay, you had it and then you didn't have it.
All right, how about now?
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, I have lived here on Dudley Street for 50 years. I took a ride the other day, and if you leave from Newton Street and you're heading to Route 9 on Clyde, there are 35 signs that you face as you drive down that street. When you are driving in the other direction, there are 24 signs heading back up to Newton Street. We're starting to look like a circus here. We've got signs, we've got blinking lights, we've got all of this stuff going on. Now you want to put in bike paths. By the way, I see an average of maybe 3 or 4 bike riders every single day. That's about how much traffic we have with bicycles. Also, I can't tell you how many big trucks come by here. When they were doing that project at Hancock Village, great big trucks were coming by here every 30 minutes. If you narrow down the gosh darn roadway with all these trucks and buses, it's going to be a mess. Anybody that goes into the gosh darn bicycle paths, they're going to be at risk because people are going to be so squeezed in. So I don't know what the answer is, but it's starting to look like a circus out here with all of the signs, the blinking lights, the painted roads, the posts on the side, the posts on the roadways. I don't know what the solution is, but I'm very, very disappointed. Also, I have never received, the only thing that I have ever received about what's going on out here is the sign that was dropped at my front door a couple of days ago. That was it. I've never heard anything else about anything that's going out here on the street. So that's my input. I don't know what more I can say, except that it's very disappointing.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Okay.
Toby Silman, feel free to unmute, make a comment.
Thank you. I'm Toby Silman, an 11th grade student at BHS, and I'm here to offer a perspective that's slightly different from that which we just heard. Okay, so good evening. My name is Toby Silman. I'm an 11th grade student at BHS. As a member of the Brookline School Committee's Sustainability Task Force, specializing in transportation, I'd like to offer my full support for the proposed bike lane infrastructure project on Lee and Clyde streets, as well as the proposal to redesign Washington Street, which is not on the agenda for today. I've spent many hours biking through Chestnut Hill to commute to work as a soccer referee. And it's plain to see that the current bike lane situation there is far from ideal. I recently sent out a petition to my fellow students at the high school, and I can confirm that at least 118 students to this date agree with me, and they support the proposed bike lanes as well. Fast-moving cars pose a high threat to cyclists in this area around Lee and Clyde, and this fear discourages residents from biking. This prevents adults from getting the exercise they need, cheats high school students out of a much-deserved safe route to school, worsens air quality, and dramatically increases the average commuter's carbon footprint. Protected bike lanes like the ones proposed on Lee and Clyde streets are the key to solving these issues. The unfortunate truth is that bike lanes aren't as good as we need them to be here in Brookline. Protected bike lanes are currently the exception, not the rule here. If we want to meet our goals of net zero by 2050, we should make it as easy as possible for cyclists to save the commuter on time. Biking must become safe and comfortable for everyone here. Our townwide transportation crisis, if you will, needs fixing, and the defeat of the bike lane infrastructure proposal on Lee and Clyde streets would pose dramatic consequences for the town and the environment. Similarly, the bike lane proposed on Washington Street has also encountered a disappointing level of opposition. In Cambridge, for example, a similar bike lane project encountered a lot of resistance from residents who feared that the bike lanes there would hurt their businesses. But a study that came out just recently showed that the recently built bike lanes had no negative impacts on business activity. Washington Square businesses should know that better bike lanes will not come at any cost to themselves. Not only would better bike lanes help the environment, they would also make it much safer for bicyclists and drivers alike. Because drivers benefit from better bike lanes too. Not only do more bike lanes mean less car traffic and safer streets as well. And on a final note, I'd just like to add a story. I was in Montreal last week and I noticed that virtually every street in the city had a protected bike lane. Using the city's excellent public bike share program, I felt safer biking in Montreal than I have ever felt anywhere else in Brookline, for example. Cars and buses in Montreal certainly benefit from this bike-friendly approach because more people biking always leads to less traffic. I think that Brookline should strive for Montreal's better, very bike-friendly infrastructure because better bike lanes and healthier, cleaner, more efficient streets for everyone, even drivers. So I hope that my story here helps the board and any Brookline residents here today in understanding that in approving these bike lanes and in saving our streets from what I personally perceive as a townwide car crisis, we will make our town safer, our transportation greener. Drivers and bikers alike will rejoice at the improved quality of life the better bike lanes will bring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toby. I live with an 11th grader at Brookline High School who completed that survey. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate you sharing your voice and that of your colleagues from the high school. I don't know who was next in order, but David Trevette, I see you, so feel free.
Thank you, Brian. David Trevette, Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. My comment is actually not directly germane to this. I just needed to, when Sam was speaking for me, unfortunately, he was not correct. While we have been trying since late last summer to have a conversation with the police department, we have not yet had the possibility. We haven't had the opportunity for the Pedestrian Advisory Committee to sit down with representative of the police department and talk about what the police department can do, what options are in terms of pedestrian safety. So we're still working, still trying to have that conversation. And while we've stated to the Transportation Board things we would like to see happen, we don't have those. Do not have the conversation started yet. So sorry, wish we could report more progress, but that's the life.
David, if anyone is ever going to succeed, it'll be you, and I know that for a fact. So thank you. Richard, I think you're up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Quite faintly.
All right, let me turn up the sound.
Maybe just speak a little closer.
All right, how about now?
It's better, but we'll strain ourselves. Go ahead.
All right, I'll strain myself as well. I'm a resident up off of Clyde Street. It's a little area. It's called, it used to be called Button Village. It's now Buttonwood Village. And it's like a community of about 100 houses. Myself, my wife have lived in this area for over 45 years. And now that I'm retired, we're both retired, we take daily walks, and we have been daily walking for at least 7 years. On some of the comments that were made by some of the other people who joined in was the kind lady from Dudley Street. I kind of agree with her that from the times we go both, even if it's raining, we walk, if it's snowing, we walk, and the sunny days we walk. There is not a lot of bicycle traffic on Lee and Clyde. There is traffic, and when I mean a bicycle, I mean the old-fashioned pedal bicycle. I see that the lane is being used also by the electric bikes and by scooters. So I don't know if it was intended to do that or not, but it seems, you know, to add one more item to the confusion of a bike lane. I think number one is pedestrians, if I was taught, had the right of way. So if a pedestrian is at like Clyde and Clyde using the crosswalk, no matter if the bike is coming in the direction, the pedestrian has the right of way. The bikes should stop, allow a pedestrian to cross the street. And I'm talking about whether you're an older pedestrian or a younger pedestrian. And I agree with everyone had comments and observations about the speed. I think at one point there were those electronic speed signs along Lee Street, but I don't recall seeing them lately. But I know driving like into Dedham, they have them posted almost every street going into Dedham. And it does help make people realize if they're going over the speed. And one other thing is about the width. So maybe this is more towards the public works, is that the size of a fire truck, you know, I believe they're close to 9 feet wide. So if you took enough, if you made 2 lanes 10 feet, especially if you came from the Putterham station down to Newton Street to take a left onto Clyde Street, there's no way that a fire truck by itself, I mean, would have to be by itself, could make that turn to get to Route 9 or wherever it's going, because reducing the lane that much. Right now, a regular motor vehicle coming from Newton Street to take a left onto Clyde Street, there's 2 lanes that allow people to take a left. And I've taken it many times. Now with the post in the way, more than one time, I've seen a car inadvertently come and bump into the first post, which is right at Clyde Street. And that one post is off of the painted line. So I think by moving post and reducing the width will greatly reduce like the other gentleman spoke. It's not going to decrease the speed. It's going to make people more anxious, you know? So I don't know. I think speed, number one, is to reduce speed. You know, if people want to ride bikes, that's up to them. I've seen people ride outside. I've filmed them outside of the lanes, both during the day and night, that they pay no attention, especially younger generations, somebody who rides for exercise versus just a commute. They're both down in Goddard Avenue as well. They don't stay in the bike lanes. They get outside the bike lanes. So I don't, you know, if there's signage to be made to say, be polite, observe the rules of the road, and respect pedestrians, number one, and stay in the lane, number 2. I mean, that's all. I can see that people want to have a bike lane, but I can't see other people being imposed to take away safety for somebody else's benefit. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. I believe Eric Stone was next. I'm sorry, I lost the order, but we'll go Eric and then, I'm sorry, wait, Eric, stop.
I'm
Sorry,
stopped.
pause. I think Scott's iPhone was next. I think you've been waiting a bit, so feel free.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to the board for giving me some time and to the work that's already been done to lower the speed. I live on 190 Dudley, which is right after that roundabout. It's the house right after it, and the speed is really a concern to me. As far as data goes, I think Nancy, you were talking about data. The data, I think I'm imagining would be car accidents around that roundabout. Richard Murphy's shared some of that with me. There's been 2 in the past probably year and a half that have actually taken out the stone wall right in front of our driveway. There's been one that's taken out the light post just down the road from it. You know, I have 2 young girls, 8 and 4, and we don't let them to the end of the driveway. And you cannot even cross as an adult that walkway there safely. I know there's been a lot of talk about safety, but you know, that roundabout people use as a slingshot, like a gravity slingshot to Route 9. And it's very dangerous. Now, I'm not a traffic expert, but I am an orthopedic trauma surgeon in the city, and I take care of people who get hit by cars going that fast. And it is catastrophic. It really is. So I can't stress enough the importance of this project from a safety perspective. It not only for, you know, the families that are on the roundabout, there's another family that moved in recently with young kids, but the people that use that walkway to get to the reservoir. It's so important. I am also a biker. I don't bike routinely, but I do on the weekends. And there's, I mean, I know there's mention that there is a bike line. There's no bike lane in front of my driveway there. There's no barrier. So thank you for the work you've done. Those are my comments. If I can be of any help in the future, I'd love to be involved. But please consider from a safety perspective to lower those speeds. I mean, these are car accidents that are taking out stone walls and telephone posts. So, you know, please, let's see what we can do. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, sir. We'll go Eric and then John Bowman.
Thank you, Eric Stone, town meeting member, precinct 8. I have a comment and a question. I'll try to be quick. I am someone who does bike on this street regularly with my children and solo. It's one of the only ways to get to Lars Anderson from where I live. So we use it in spite of it being horrifying. So I am fully supportive of a protected bike lane. That leads to my second question, which is, did the project committee consider reducing travel lanes for cars as part of this plan? If you did that, you could have protected bike lanes, parking, and car travel, potentially solving multiple issues and reducing travel speed.
So a road
Tim?
diet, yeah. So a road diet or a similar lane reduction. We're balancing two things here. Like, obviously, I think that it's a great idea always in terms of trying to increase safety. You know, our team has put in a request for what will eventually hopefully be a complete feasibility study of a bike route from South Brookline to North Brookline. And, you know, they operate somewhat in parallel. And so we do hope that recommendations will come out of this feasibility study next year. If we, I don't know if it's happening right now, but it could be happening right now, some sort of budget meeting or something. But we, you know, we do have a request for that funding to complete a feasibility study of this bike route. And that is a potential recommendation that could come out of it. So our view was that this was a short to medium term solution that would improve conditions for everyone or improve safety for everyone. And if there is a lengthier public process that is required at a future date around a lane reduction, we will tackle it when we get there.
Thank you.
You, Eric. Sam, I remember hearing a presentation on that very topic 15 odd years ago from Peter Firth. So maybe dust out the archives and you might not need to spend the money on the feasibility study. John Bowman.
Thank you. My name is John Bowman. I'm a town meeting member, precinct 10, former chair of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Brookline has had a Green Routes bicycle network plan for many years. It proposes, and one of the most important things that it proposes is a connected network of protected bike lanes needed for safe bike travel throughout Brookline. This is merely one segment, but it's one important segment in this proposed protected network. So it's important to carry out this project, but it's only one segment. It will almost certainly be the case that a lot of people aspiring to travel by bike between South and North Brookline won't start doing so until the whole route is completed. So yes, again, this segment is needed. It's one step in the right direction, but completion of the rest of the proposed protected framework throughout Brookline is and continues to be needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate your comments as always. Audrey Chang, I feel like you've been waiting a while. Feel free to unmute and make a comment.
Hi, yeah, so I'm a current VHS student. I'm a sophomore, and I do live in the South Brookline area. And I just wanted to say, like, I do want to bike to school a lot, especially since the weather's getting a lot nicer now. However, I do feel very unsafe on Clyde and Lee. Even with like the trial and the current flex posts that are there, it's not very consistent throughout, and that's kind of prevented me from using that lane. So I hope to just have this motion be passed because I want to bike more, and mainly because I also want to not have to use the school bus every morning because it does make me wake up earlier and I'd rather sleep in a bit. And I just wanted to provide my support for this motion.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Chang. Appreciate you taking the time. Thank you. Anthony Ishak. Hey, Anthony. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to ask for one point of clarification before I mention my comments. I'll introduce myself and then I'll ask for a clarification. So I am a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee and a town meeting member in Precinct 1. However, I have family that lives in Putteram Circle, and I'll get to those comments in a minute. Sam, I might have missed it, and I should know it by now, having heard this data and presentation multiple times. Can you remind me of the time frame of this pilot, when it began and when it officially ended in terms of looking at the data?
We ran this pilot from the very beginning of January, basically the start of the new year, through public comment was available to be collected on the Google form until the beginning of April. So we ended up running it for 3 complete months, about 3.5.
Right, thank you for that comment and clarification. So I'm speaking obviously in favor of this as a pilot becoming permanent. The reason I'm in favor of it is a couple of different reasons. I do have family in Putteram Circle. Usually in the winter months and when the weather isn't great, I drive there. When it's warmer and I know I can get there in daylight and back without sun glare and things like that, then I will try and bike it. I don't bike it as much as I would like to because I want to be able to do it in infrastructure that I feel supported and safe in. More people, I suspect, will think about that and they follow the infrastructure, right? So in order to get us to go there, safer infrastructure will help. The best example I could give personally is I started a new position in the summer last year, and for the first time in 17 years or so, I was willing to bike Somerville. Somerville has a commuted pathway, and they had a lot of bollard areas set up. The only area I felt unsafe from my home in Precinct 1 to the doors of the clinic in Assembly Row was the first 1/4 of a mile where I have to get from my house to the BU Bridge. Most of that, which is Brookline and isn't protected. After that, the next 5.5 miles were all protected in some manner and made it safer. And because of the way the roads are set up, cars were going much slower, even though they probably have similar traffic patterns. So I do think by having the infrastructure in place, this will encourage more people to do it and to be able to do it safely. I also want to highlight that when the pilot was done was probably less than ideal if you're looking at cyclists going through. Even though our winters have become more like mid-Atlantic winters, you probably aren't going to see as many people who are going to be biking up to that area for another month or so. And then May through September, you'll see more frequent people going there. So I do speak in support of this. I think it's a good way to start building out the network and to encourage people in South Brookline to have a safer way, particularly in an area which isn't as rich in public transportation, to help people get around who may not be able to drive consistently, and to be able to encourage healthier ways of being outdoors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it as always. Richard Murphy.
Hey, Brian, how you doing tonight?
Always great to see you. Please go ahead.
Hey, appreciate you allowing me to speak. Richard Murphy, town meeting member, precinct 16. And I want to thank Amy and Sam for the support on this. Dan, welcome to Brookline. This is a main thoroughfare to get from South Brookline to the high school and to connect to the rest of Brookline. This whole area of Brookline is made up of the Country Club, the Los Anderson Park, Allendale Farm, and this is the bottleneck as far as trying to get from point A in South Brookline to the rest of Brookline. So this is a key artery here to bring safety. A couple of stats in doing some homework in the past. Traffic accidents between the intersection of Clyde and Newton all the way to Route 9. The town of Brookline, between the period 2014 to 2019, 6 years, averages 37 car accidents per year along this roadway. And also the Federal Highway Administration basically says that in reducing lanes width, actually it can reduce speeds 7 to 8 miles an hour. So those are stats that I have seen. And as far as students riding this roadway, I will be riding a bike bus from Baker on Friday morning, and which will have over a dozen kids with us and parents riding from the Baker School in South Brookline to the Brookline High School. And we do this in support to show recognition, obviously, to bring attention to the awareness of needing safe bicycle infrastructure in South Brookline, but also for the fact that right now these kids, they want to do it now. And this is great what Amy and Sam are bringing to the table as far as improving safety for bicyclists and by also slowing cars down at the same time. Obviously, it goes hand in hand. And I won't take up any more of your time, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Richard. And Richard ran the bike bus that I took part in last fall, and he's been, you're obviously been doing this for a long time. We appreciate your efforts to make it safer for your part of town and all over Brookline. So thank you. David Krupp.
Hi, Brian. Good evening. Thank you for taking my comments. First, I'd like to thank Amy and Sam for bringing forward this proposal, which I support. I just want to emphasize 2 things here. I really think we need to do more even than this to bring down speeds on Lee and Clyde. And I, like some others, I did ride down there during the pilot. And I'm a very experienced cyclist. I've been riding in urban environments for over 40, maybe even 50 years. But this felt like riding next on a high-speed rural road with traffic going at 45 miles an hour, really way beyond anything you expect in Brookline. The other thing is I would really urge the division to try to figure out the snow removal problem, because it's even more difficult. The safety concerns are greater in the winter than in the summer. People are commuting when it's dark out, and the need for the bollards or flex posts is even greater, I think, in the winter. And we're trying to encourage students to be able to ride. And of course, for them, a lot of the school year is in the winter, and they frequently may be coming home after dark. So, I guess I think we should be looking at what Cambridge and Somerville and Boston have been doing to keep the bollards up, because they do seem to be doing it in the winter. So those are my 2 comments. Thanks.
Thanks very much, David. Appreciate you and your advocacy as always, and keep up the great work running those awesome rides on weekends.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll do last call for comments. Oh, we have a Penny Lane sighting. Sorry, I just gotta stop and say Shanali's dog is there. So yay, Penny Lane. Now I feel better. Sorry, where was I? I got distracted by the dog and I lost my total train of thought. Last call for public comments on this item. I see we have 26 attendees, and we've had a significant amount of public comments. So okay, we'll close the public comment period at this time, and we'll turn it back to the board. Any questions, comments, concerns for the staff?
It's one f- food for thought. I don't know if we need to really discuss it now, but just looking at the Brook Online list of things that you could put in for, there's nothing specific to bike lanes or flex posts or posts or things like that, just from a maintenance perspective, if we want to think about if it's beneficial.
Great idea, Shanali. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you know, I said earlier that I view this as a thing to slow down speeds. You know, we heard some comments, and Jeffrey Cook, I think, you know, kind of encapsulated my thoughts that this is an incredibly fast road that I think we need to take a much harder look at, and I think we need to do more. And I'm heartened to hear Sam mention that this is sort of an iterative process, and this is a, you know, a short to medium term approach. And I think we all have heard that there's more to do out there to slow down cars. And I think this will help. I know that it's not a solution, but it certainly, you know, I just want to say this isn't, as far as I'm concerned, this isn't the end of the process. This is a step in the direction that we all need to take over a longer period of time to slow down traffic on Lee and Clyde. It's not a drag speed raceway, but it certainly feels like that sometimes. So at the very least, we should start here and keep going. And I know that that is the intention of the division, and I certainly welcome it. So I plan to support this as a safety improvement measure to reduce traffic. But I'd invite my fellow board members, if they have any other comments, to go ahead. And if not, we can see if anybody wants to make a motion. Okay, the proposed language, which is usually how we do this, is to narrow the two north and southbound lanes on Lee and Clyde streets between Route 9 and Newton Street to 10 feet and add a 2-foot painted buffer and flex posts to the existing bike lane. Sam, I saw you on mute. Did I get that wrong?
You crushed it, Brian.
Maybe not the right terminology to use tonight. But anyway,
It's on me. It's on me.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved.
Thank you, Len. Second? Is there a second?
Seconded.
Jonathan, I'll take that as a second. Can one person please call the roll?
Len,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
Shanali, Nancy.
Yes.
Thank you, team.
Great, thank you. And look forward to hearing the next steps after implementation to see how we can continue to slow down traffic out there and make it safer for everybody. But thank you, that's great. We'll move on now. So is item 9? So I'm confused as to what item 9 is. So can someone tell me what item 9 is, please?
It's the approval of some of the changes in the first package of the transportation and mobility plan improvements
Okay.
for fiscal year 24.
Okay.
So it's essentially a batch of crosswalks that,
Okay.
you know, by their virtue of being crosswalks and taking up space, we'll need to eliminate 1 or 2 parking spaces, depending on the instance.
Okay, so we are going to look at the transportation and mobility improvement sections, 2 new crosswalks and removal of 1 parking spot on Freeman Street at Brown, 1 new crosswalk and removal of 2 parking spots on Brown Street at Still, 1 new crosswalk and removal of 1 parking spot on Powell Street at Parkman. Amy, do you have this item?
I sure do, and I can share my screen to show the plans. Yeah.
Please do.
Okay, can you see that?
Sure can.
Excellent. So this is Brown Street and this is Freeman Street. Currently, I believe there is a crosswalk here at the stop sign. So that is remaining. What we don't have is crosswalks across Freeman currently, so we are proposing to, oops, sorry, thought that was going to zoom in and it did not. What we're proposing to do is add those crosswalks. Make it a little bigger there. So crosswalk here. Like I said, because they take up space, particularly this one. 2 parking spaces would be eliminated in order to put in this crosswalk. This one, we're good, I believe. It doesn't take any spaces. So that's the first one. And by the way, we can, it's built into the agenda right now as a single motion, but it can be separated out into 3 motions if you guys feel like you want to do that for one reason or another.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just a process question. So my understanding is that this is also within the purview of the DPW commissioner to just sort of do this.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about, what crosses over the threshold for something that we want to bring to you guys. And I think there's still some discussion to be had around that, but we've been kind of erring on the side of caution and basically bringing it to you guys if there's parking loss.
Okay, just to be clear though, so is it 10 feet? Is it a 10-foot perimeter near crosswalks?
20.
That 20. Okay, so our policy is within 20 feet of a crosswalk, we want to eliminate parking to make sure that there is proper sight lines.
That's correct. So these crosswalks, some of the parking spaces were right where the crosswalk is, but it might also be, part of that 20 feet. I will say that it's pretty minimal parking lots, in part because I believe everywhere we're looking at is residential area, so there are driveways, which make it so there isn't parking there anyway. So the effects are pretty minimal.
So I just want to be clear, Amy, just so I want to make sure we're not usurping the commissioner's authority and make it clear that, if this is within her purview, but she's choosing to bring it here for our consideration, we appreciate that, but this is in no way a usurpation.
Yep. No, she's been in the conversations with us, and this is kind of where we're at right now, but subject to change.
Okay.
Future.
Thank you.
Sure. So similarly, this is Brown and Still Street. Currently, I do believe there's a crosswalk here, at least ramps of some kind at this stop sign. There is no crosswalk here currently to cross Brown Street, so we're proposing one with some bump outs on either end to make pedestrians more visible, since there's parked cars on this side. And then the last one is Parkman Street in the horizontal and Powell in the vertical. Again, this is a stop sign here on Parkman. I do believe there's some sort of crosswalk existing, so we're keeping that and then adding a new crosswalk to cross Powell Street in this location with some bump outs, minimal parking.
Okay. Is there a reason why there aren't the third crosswalk here? Sort of on the south side and on the other one as well. There's only 2, not 3.
Yeah, I might have to ask Dan to help me remember all the things, but I believe that there was, in this case, maybe a tree and or drainage structure. Dan, do you recall the specifics?
Yeah, there's a tree, a driveway, and a manhole that are all making it difficult to build it on the south side there.
Okay. And that was also the case at Still, right? There was only 2, not 3. I assume there's another impediment.
Here, yep. See, there's the drainage feature right there. Yep. And it's not to say those couldn't be built in the future, but one thing we're also weighing is like how much of these things are feasible to do as part of a pavement preservation project. So there's a balance. Yep.
Completely understand. Yeah, I guess I just want to suggest that our inclination is to put in as many crosswalks as we can to make it easier, safer for folks to cross where and when it's safe. But there are things out there that we can't move sometimes that, you know, without doing a major project that make it that not possible.
100%, yeah. We're having a lot
Okay.
of conversations around this topic, and I think more explanations about conclusions to come, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Questions from the board? Okay, let's open this up for public comment. If you would like to comment on these proposals, you can use the raise hand function and you'll be elevated to panelist. Let's bring up Linda Olson-Pelkey and we'll bring up David Trevette. And then when they finish, you can keep bringing folks up one at a time. You know the drill. Linda, welcome back. You can unmute, turn your camera on if you're comfortable, and make your comment when you're ready.
Thank you, Brian. By way of introduction, my name is Linda Olson-Pelkey. I am a town meeting member in Precinct 17, and I'm here in my capacity as a trustee of the Carlton Arms condominium on Brown Street. So I'm speaking directly to the Still Street to Brown crosswalk. I think anyone who knows me knows I'm an avid pedestrian, so I am definitely not opposed to crosswalks. However, I am actually opposed to this crosswalk. The one going from this is my property. You see the nice little gardens and the curving lines and the actual walkway meets the sidewalk, which is pretty much where the bump out is for this crosswalk. This property, we have 2 parking spaces behind the building. This is not a property with driveways. This is not a property that has off-street parking. I no longer own a vehicle, but when I did have a car, I had a parking sticker to sit on that Brown Street when I had groceries or guests or anything else. And the park generates a lot of parking demand. And so actually losing those spaces right there where people who are mobility challenged trying to get to their residence through the courtyard or unload their groceries and get their groceries to their front door, they already have a long way to walk. And removing the 2 spots right there, which is kind of the prime place to try to target if you're me or anyone living in 50, 48, 46, 44, this is a 50-unit building. It's often challenging to find parking in front of the building. The other comment I'd make is Brown Street is a very, very low traffic street, as is Still Street. And there's not a lot of people that walk on Still Street that I have observed at all either. So I think this is basically not necessary here. I cross the street many times. You might know I take care of the Rose Garden. It's right across the street. I come out, I stand, I look both ways and walk through the middle of the block. It's not a problem. I actually think having a crosswalk here is less safe. I mean, the bump outs are good, but people having the expectation that simply because you're in a crosswalk, the cars are going to stop. It doesn't feel safer to me. It actually feels less safe. And we have a lot of people with carriages. That's the other thing. A lot of babies. People struggling with their families, they're going to want to park right there and use that walkway. So that's my feedback about this. I'm kind of curious, was this identified in any way by anyone complaining about feeling unsafe or any problems that anyone's had here? I'm just curious.
I can go and respond to that. No, it's just part of our Complete Streets process to assess any intersection where we're doing pavement preservation work and determine whether or not additional sidewalks are needed, particularly for ADA compliance. You might be able to cross mid-block and step off the curb, but folks in wheelchairs or other mobility aids might not be able to do that. So that's one reason that we would install a crosswalk. And just to specify, or to clarify rather, is only one parking space being lost on in this case. The top one here, maybe someone's parking there now, but that's not a legal space because it's too close to the intersection. So only this bottom one is taking the space, just one.
I still have the same comment. I really do not think this is needed, and I don't think it's going to really improve safety. I get the idea about the ramp, but by doing the bump out, you're also, I mean, it is kind of wide here. We get a lot of people who, like school buses and stuff, they use this as a stopping point to on the other side of the street where the parking is not allowed. It's like a place where people can idle and wait and stuff. I'm often going out there asking people to turn their vehicles off because they idle. But now we would be, you know, significantly narrowing it, so maybe that activity would stop. But I just think the loss of the parking is more of a detriment to the people living in my building than needing a crosswalk. And like I said, Still Street is super, super low volume. Only the people that live on Still Street, basically, or the people who use it to park for the park drive on that.
Thank you, Linda. I should note Linda is an alumnus of the Transportation Board. Thank you.
I'm in favor of the other two, by the way.
Brookline.
And the big problem we have is the slip lane from Powell to Brown Street. If we could,
Linda,
yeah.
that's not on the agenda.
All right.
Right now.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Who was next? David.
Thank you very much, Brian. David Trevette, Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, speaking for myself, also a town meeting member from Precinct 2, which is this is in. We really border a couple of precincts right here. I was generally favorable for all these proposals, though I found Linda's comments very interesting. I hadn't been to that specific spot. And so one of my questions regarding that, this was across Brown Street at Still, is are the bump outs needed to provide sufficient space for wheelchairs to get down ramps? Is that needed, or could one remove the bump outs if in fact Brown Street there is not a heavily traveled street? I don't know about the traffic volume right there, and thereby preserve more parking for Linda's development.
The removal of a bump out wouldn't preserve any parking, because it's still, the parking is basically right on top of where the crosswalk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. I was going to
Excuse me, I didn't hear Amy, could you repeat your comment? Because I couldn't hear it.
Sorry. If we removed the bump outs, we would still have to lose this parking space because the parking space is literally right on top of where the crosswalk is shown.
Thank you.
Okay, I was going to comment more specifically on the crosswalk at across Freeman and Brown, that intersection. There actually is an existing crosswalk on the east side of that intersection. My wife and I use that multiple times a week. And one thing I can testify to is the fact that there's a stanchion on that crosswalk, and it gets clobbered fairly frequently. The northbound traffic on Babcock Street sort of just zips around the corner onto Freeman and heads east, and they come up very quickly to this intersection, and they tend to be going fairly fast. So I think that more cautionary measures to help pedestrians making that crossing, which is frequent, are very helpful. And so I'm all in favor. So it would be nice. I appreciate the situation that Linda's dealing with at Still and Brown. I'm not sure what the good solution would be. Certainly very supportive of this one, and as also I've been involved in past discussions about issues at Parkman and Powell, and so very supportive of that one. So thank you very much for the chance to comment.
Thank you, David. Anthony, go ahead, please.
Seems like it's feast or famine. I only come out to transportation board if there's multiple topics on the agenda to speak to. So town meeting member precinct 1, and similar to David, one of these is directly impacting me. I live on Freeman Street at the end of the third example, and then the other two I pass through there multiple times a week, heading to Coolidge Corner or for various other reasons. The one for Still Street being near the Rose Garden, I think it's important for a couple of different reasons. There's kids in that area. So I think helping to educate them by seeing the crosswalk and understanding that when the crosswalk is there, you know, you prepare for it and you cross there. So I think it does help in terms of teaching good behavior, I would think. Speaking to the parking situation, as Amy mentioned, it should be illegal. I think the bump out also helps with the idea of, you know, sometimes cars idling, whether they should or they shouldn't. I mean, that's obviously illegal, but it's also near a park, and the exposure to people in the park from cars idling, I'm not sure is a great idea. I suspect there's health data to show that. It's a public street, you know, the public has the access to use it. I'm not sure that it should be used as someone's parking lot. That's all I'll say for that one. My biggest concern and reason for supporting the third option was the Powell Street crosswalk. So I walk down that street, Powell to Freeman 4 times a week, or bike it when I'm coming home from work. I take the T stop like many people do, get out at the Kent Street stop. And most people going outbound exit, then they walk down because of the signal light. And around where that crosswalk is, it's pretty dense because those are all condo buildings. So people usually walk maybe about a quarter of the way down, and then they do a diagonal cross. And so having a crosswalk there, I think, will be helpful for that reason. Ideally, it would be great to have the other crosswalk too, because I think that's actually more reasonable. Most people will probably cross there versus, you know, waiting for where the proposed crosswalk will be painted. What I would hope is that this could be used in some manner to slow some traffic down Powell Street. You know, I recognize this is just going to be paint because that's the best use of our resources. Ideally, a raised crosswalk would be helpful there, because a lot of car traffic will cut through there, because that is a way to get from Comm Ave to Beacon in both directions. You can't do that on Amory, which is the street to the east. So Amory can be a little bit slower on that side. But people will use it as a way to avoid the stoplights on St. Paul. And because they could go north-south, they will use it more frequently to cut through there versus Amory Street. So I would hope if there's a way to make the crosswalk raised or to impact traffic to slow it, that would help as far as with that. Otherwise, I'm in support of all 3 of these ideas. I think they're great ways to help at least my precinct and the nearby precinct to make it easier to traverse to the 3 parks and major commercial areas such as Coolidge Corner from precinct 1. Thank you.
Very much, Anthony. Dan Murphy, I think you've been waiting a while. Feel free to unmute, turn your camera on if you're comfortable, and make your comment.
Brian, Dan Murphy would be, it would be Cynthia would be next.
I'm sorry, Cynthia. Please go ahead, turn the camera on and make your comment if you're comfortable.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Biron, and I actually live on 44 Brown Street, and I am on the board of trustees with Linda Pelkey. And I just want to just say that I support and agree with everything that Linda stated. In my view from my windows is precisely Still Street and Brown Street. And I've lived here for 17 years. And I agree with Linda, there is not a lot of traffic. And I actually don't think either of these crosswalks is necessary.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia, for your comment. Appreciate your taking the time. I guess we'll do last call for comments. Questions, concerns? Okay, I don't see. Okay, we have 12 people left in the audience, and I think we've heard from everybody we're going to hear from. So we'll close the public comment for this item. I just wanted to note that this is the context for this is that these streets are going to kind of get resurfaced as part of our new transportation and mobility plan. So in addition, to the streets we're talking about here, South Street, from West Roxbury Parkway to Newton, Tully from Boylston to Heath, Brown has been mentioned from Freeman to St. Paul, and Parkman from Pleasant to St. Paul will all get resurfaced under our new transportation plan. And because of that, certain new markings and curb ramps and other items, the ADA stuff is getting triggered. And since we have to do some sidewalk repairs, then because of that, it brings up under our complete streets policy these items. So just wanted to let folks sort of know that the reason that this has come up is because we're going to be starting to work on those streets, and very grateful to town meeting for allocating the funding to do more of this. And I think we all agree that we need to do more of this, and we're going to talk later on about how we can do more of this. But that's sort of why this is coming up, and it's because of the condition of those streets. We have condition assessments for pretty much every street in town. So that's why this is coming up, in case folks are sort of wondering why we're doing this now. So it's a good thing that we're doing this, but just, of course, when you start doing stuff, it's like if you're working on your property and you start a project and you discover there's lots of other stuff you have to do. So that's sort of why we're here. And that's a good thing, believe it or not. So I appreciate everyone's comments, and I appreciate the fact that town staff are trying to get these things out to bid, and let's get these projects going as we sort of tiptoe towards construction season. Hopefully the weather will get better at some point in our lifetime. Okay, other questions or comments from the board? Nancy, please go ahead.
So on the Still and Brown crosswalks, what is the specific reason to add those crosswalks? And the reason I ask is not because I see that there's, I'm not really concerned about the parking, but I don't know what the cost is of doing it, but I walk that area all the time. There is no traffic there. I hardly ever see cars. I don't see very many pedestrians in that area. I mean, I know they're in the park, but I don't see them using those particular areas. So I'm just a little concerned about doing something that's not really needed when there are other things in the town that desperately need to be done. And so it's just, if something doesn't need to be done, I'm just wondering why we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, as part of our complete streets policy, we're kind of required to look at each intersection and determine those types of needs. As far as the top crosswalk is concerned, the one across Still Street, that is existing, I believe, in some form today, or at least the ramp. So really all we're doing is making sure that it's ADA compliant. The second one is connecting two parks. And, like I mentioned before, it's not just about, a safe place for people to cross, but it's literally a place that someone in a wheelchair or some other assistive device can ramp down to the street level and physically be able to cross if they can't step off the curb.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's persuasive to me that making it ADA compliant is something that I think is important. But that was just my question is, what does it really add? if there's not a lot of traffic there, but I understand the concern about making them ADA compliant.
Thanks, Nancy. Len?
I've walked to Winthrop Square many times, and I see the proposed crosswalk here as being the safest place to cross Brown Street, as opposed to crossing at St. Paul or Pleasant Street. I think this will be much safer.
Thanks, Len. Any other questions, comments, concerns? So the staff is recommending that we approve all 4 new crosswalks and the required removal of 4 parking spaces at the 3 intersections listed above again, which is 2 new crosswalks that require the removal of 1 parking spot on Freeman and Brown. 1 new crosswalk, which requires removal of 2 parking spots on Brown at Still, and 1 new crosswalk that requires the removal of 1 parking spot on Powell at Parkman. That is what is ahead of us, and I will, if anyone has a motion, I'll entertain it at this time.
So moved.
Thanks, Len. Is there a second? Jonathan, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, are you sure you want to take all of these together? Are you sure you have 4 votes for all of them?
Good point. Len, would you be open to amending your motion to take these separately?
Sure.
All right, we'll do them separately. So is there a motion to install 2 new crosswalks and remove 1 parking spot on Freeman Street at Brown Street?
So moved.
Is there a second? Jonathan, you're not going to second this since you made us do this?
Sorry, second.
Thank you. Amy, Sam,
Sorry.
someone call the roll?
Sonali,
Yes.
Wendy.
She's not here tonight.
Oh, sorry. Brian,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yeah.
And
Is there a motion to install 1 new crosswalk requiring the removal of 2 parking spots on Brown Street at Still Street as demonstrated tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second, Jonathan?
Second.
Sonali,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, John, I'm just having fun. And finally,
Yeah,
is
it's
there
okay.
a motion to install a new crosswalk requiring the removal of 1 parking spot on Powell Street at Parkman as demonstrated tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shanali. Call the roll, Dan.
Sonali,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yeah.
And passes.
Okay. Those all pass. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. It's 10 minutes to 9. Can we take like a 2-minute break or something? Can we come? Is that all right with everybody? We come back at 8:55?
Yep.
All right. We'll see you in 6 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Dan Murphy, sorry I called on you earlier. I'm gotta get used to.
That's all right. That's all right.
Sorry about that. Okay. We will move on to item 10. Discussion and action on punch bowl request for special outdoor seating permit at 700 Brookline Avenue, also known as River Road. Who has this item?
That would be me. This is Punch Bowl's request to keep their outdoor seating in place. The barricades are already installed. The road is closed, and Punch Bowl has been doing outdoor dining since May 2020 in this location. The Parks and Open Space Committee has approved the use of River Road, which is actually parkland, for their portion of the road, and the select board has so approved the permit contingent on the transportation board also approving the clear the road. And
I feel like we just did this like a couple months ago.
And Jen is here for us if there's any questions from the board, and you're free to give any comments, Jen, if you'd like.
Just want to thank everyone. And as you mentioned, it has already passed with Parks and Rec and with the select board. And we're excited to open up the outside dining, hopefully to approve as the weather gets nicer.
And thank you for all you do for the town and for your multiple locations in Brookline. Like we like, my family loves them all.
Thank you.
And I think the outdoor seating at Punch Bowl on River Road is a great amenity. I've been out there for breakfast several times on Friday mornings, and I just think it's a great addition for the town, and I'd much rather personally see it used for seating for the public than as a road. So that's just me. Questions, comments? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? I should note we have received public comments via email, and those are part of the record, and we have them and we have read them, and they are generally supportive. Okay, I don't see any hands leaping up. So
you'll see in the motion, Brian.
Yeah, please.
I'm requesting that for next year, if they want to apply for outdoor dining, that if the select board approves, that we could bring the item under the consent agenda, so it wouldn't need discussion.
That makes brilliant sense, Dan.
And I think you're good.
All right, so the question is there a motion to approve the request for the special outdoor seating permit at 700 Brookline Avenue, contingent on the approvals of the select board and Parks and Open Space? So that's not a sentence, whoever wrote that.
So move.
Yeah.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Shonali?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Jonathan?
Yes.
And
You guys are great engineers, but you can't write sentences. Anyway, thank you. It's approved. Jen, thank you. Good luck, and we'll see you out there.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Too. We will go to item 11, which is same topic for Prairie Fire. So discussion and action on a request from Prairie Fire for a special outdoor seating permit at 242 Harvard Street, which is the Webster Street parking lot. And I assume you have this one as well?
Yep. Similar to Prairie Fire. I mean, similar to Punch Bowl, Prairie Fire has been doing this since 2020. In the past, they had been taking the back portion of the Webster Street lot, and now there's an EV station located there. So they've reconfigured the outdoor dining so we can leave the EV station accessible and they'll now be using the 5 spaces that are next to the building on their side. And Julie is here representing Prairie Fire. And,
Hi, everyone.
Evening.
And we're here if you have any questions.
So Julie, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. My name is Julie Roach. I'm the business manager for Prairie Fire. This would be our 3rd season launching the beer garden Outback in the Webster Street lot. And we've just had so much outreach from our regulars and people who have come to really love that space. A lot of families, people of all ages, and we really enjoy providing that for the community. And it's a lot of fun for us to offer something different and outside in that space. So I'm happy to be here to answer any questions that you guys might have about what our plans are.
Thanks, Julie. Nancy, I see your hand.
Yes, is this the same size and the same number of parking spaces that are being taken as in previous years?
It's a smaller size and we're planning fewer tables than we had previously. Just from judging from what our current proposal looks like, I think it's at least 1 fewer parking spot that we're taking.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, questions? I also look forward to enjoying the beer garden.
Great.
And if I can get a table, that is. That's the hard part. But no, you folks do great work, and I think it's a great amenity for the neighborhood and for the Coolidge Corner area. So I'm grateful that you're still doing it, and all our small businesses are very important to us, and just want to thank you for doing what you're doing. Anybody have any comments or questions from the public? From the 5 people left, we lost 1. Oh, well. Oh, no, one of them was you, Julie. You're here now. Okay, seeing none. So we also have had public comments provided by email on this item, and I just wanted to note that they are generally supportive. And I appreciate you Julie, working with Sam and the new EV charger that we installed on the lot, and balancing all the needs of everybody is not easy, but I think I'd rather have people sitting out there enjoying themselves with their families and their friends than park cars there. So I plan to vote yes on this. Their recommendation is that the Transportation Board approve a request for a special outdoor seating permit for Prairie Fire at 242 Harvard Street to use the Webster Street parking lot. Contingent on the approvals of the Select Board, future requests from Prairie Fire to use the Webster Street parking lot can be placed on the Transportation Board consent agenda unless there is substantial changes in the application. And that's the similar language to what we just approved. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Nancy. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Shanali. Dan, you're up.
Sonali,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Okay. Thank you.
Jonathan could be affirmative. I didn't see that.
Oh, sorry. Jonathan, did you vote?
I think so.
Okay, I just didn't hear. Thank you.
He's a yes. Julie, thank you. Good luck, and look forward to seeing you out there as well.
Great. Thank you all very much. We'll see you out there.
All right. Item 12. Discussion on draft changes to the traffic calming policy.
That's me.
You saved the best for last, Amy. Go ahead.
Right. So just to be clear, this is just a discussion. I know there's a lot to this, so I wanted to kind of bring you guys the ideas that we've all been talking about. When I say we all, my team, transportation team, and get some feedback from you. So Nothing's necessarily set in stone yet, but we think we have a pretty good direction here and are really excited to hear what you guys think. Can you see my screen, issue 12?
Yes.
Great. So first I want to just establish some history and context of the existing policy that I believe was initially created in 2012 and then updated in 2018. You know, basically it lays out the process, including a commitment to asking for CIP funding on an annual basis. Judging by our imperfect but existing document of completed traffic calming projects to date, which is found on our website, looks like about 43 projects received some kind of treatment. And I say it that way because it wasn't always traffic calming that ended up being the result. It was sometimes just some signs or something to that effect. There were a few cases which I removed from the total that no action was taken whatsoever. And some of these cases also predated, I believe, the policy, but were still traffic calming projects. So kept it in the number there. So the current process starts off with signatures. So it's a public request. People get signatures from their neighbors, basically agreeing that they want traffic calming to happen. Staff receives that request and then does a report, additional needs assessment report, which includes taking a lot of field measurements and gathering data in the field, such as like volume counts and speed measurements, and really just collecting a lot of data from different locations. And then once that report is finished, we would take it to the Public Works Commissioner, and they would make a determination whether or not traffic calming was justified in this case. And if it was, we would then bring that determination and the initial needs assessment to you guys, the Transportation Board, and then you would vote whether or not you think it is justified. And if you say yes, then it goes back to staff, and we would develop a concept plan as to how we would traffic, what infrastructure we would recommend. Upon finishing that concept plan, we would bring it to a neighborhood meeting of the area that we're discussing, get some feedback on that plan, incorporate that feedback and bring it to a second meeting, and come to like a final concept design, more or less, and bring that back to the Transportation Board yet again for a final approval of the plan. At that point, if it's approved, funds will be programmed in the CIP for further design work if needed. We might hire a consultant to do that design work depending on what types of treatments were recommended, and then it would be programmed for construction. That sounds like a lot, and I think it is. And one of the reasons that we're here talking about this today is because it is very time consuming. I think that the process is noble and tries to be very thorough, and is trying to achieve really great ends, but I think it also has just become too cumbersome, you know, in light of the popularity of traffic calming requests. You know, I've only been here for a year, so I can't speak to like how it's been with all of these requests, but I will tell you that, you know, in this past year, it is the most requested thing that I have, the most common request that I've encountered is some kind of traffic calming. Like, we can't do this process that I just laid out quick enough to like make the list go in the correct direction. It grows much faster than we can complete. So we wanted to come up with a different strategy that's less time consuming for staff, but somehow still fulfilling requests and, you know, calming traffic in places that need it. Another issue that I saw with the current policy is that it's based on requests. So it's really about kind of, you know, dealing with the squeaky wheel, which is all well and good. We like public involvement, of course, and, you know, we want to respond to our residents. However, there are, you know, maybe some neighborhoods that don't have the social capital or the time or the know-how to make a request. but still have a very, strong need for traffic calming. So we want to make sure that we're addressing those neighborhoods too, and really spending our limited funds on places that need traffic calming the most. Another area that we wanted to see improved was the traffic calming plans themselves. The way that they've been done so far, for the most part, are pretty complex to design often. So we would have to maybe hire a consultant to do the design, and also complex to build. That obviously adds money, but also time. And related to that is the public involvement piece. Once the project has kind of started, holding 4 public meetings over the life of the project just feels kind of excessive for what we're trying to achieve. So I think there's a better way. So the goals of the new policy, to kind of look at what I just said in a slightly different way, are to streamline the workflow so that we can process requests faster and more of them each year, and actually handle this backlog instead of letting it grow and grow and grow indefinitely. We also want to be able to identify and prioritize streets that need traffic calming based on actual data and not on people who just emailing us and requesting this stuff. And we also want to look at if we can do traffic calming in a way that reduces the cost of construction, of design and construction, and will also reduce the time it would take to do those things. There are lots of different treatments that are listed in the current policy as potential, traffic calming options: just chokers, neck downs, chicanes, center islands, raised crosswalks. There's like 17 or something I've listed here, and that's not even all the things that were listed in the policy. That's great, but a lot of these things take design. A lot of them are more complicated to construct. They affect drainage and things like that. All these things inflate the price and also take longer. So we also want to develop a process that has, of course, meaningful community engagement, but community engagement that is right-sized for what we're trying to do. So getting into kind of some of the proposals now, the goal of streamlining workflow, we want to look at what data sets we have, which, big data is a reality now that wasn't really a thing so much when this policy was initially written. We have some resources now, including an online source called Streetlight that captures various things about vehicles using, I believe it's cell phone pings. It's not perfect, but it does have a lot of promise and can tell us particularly like good, useful information in comparing one street to another, the relative average speed of one street to another, for example. So we want to find those data sets that we already have access to, rather than sending people out in the field and manually collecting data for every place we're interested in, and incorporating them into what's called GIS, or Geographic Information Systems layers. We already have a lot of GIS layers for the town. If we put all these GIS layers together, we can use this software to basically do an analysis of the entire town with multiple factors layered on top of one another at once. And so that can actually identify streets based on the need, not just based on requests, which is kind of the second goal. We want to use this data to identify the streets that have the highest risk, that have the most speeding, that have the most crashes, not just the loudest person asking for things. And that improves equity as well as improves our effectiveness on traffic calming streets. And I also mentioned we want to reduce design and construction costs. There's nothing wrong with all those different measures that I listed at all, but they're effective, but a lot of them do require design and drainage changes. And like I say, those just cost money and take a long time. So there are simpler things that we can use that don't actually require a full design. It's just we call it a standard detail. We can give that to the contractor and they can build it. It doesn't affect drainage enough for us to have to regrade the whole, the whole street and like put in new drainage features and all these things that add time and money. And speed humps is really kind of the epitome of that. They're effective at slowing cars down, but they also leave space for drainage here. You can see these channels on the side. They don't need a bunch of, impressive design work with them. The picture on the right here is actually from the city of Boston, not Brookline, but I included it because I thought it was just really captured a lot of the elements of what a speed hump is and why I think they're really useful. It shows the drainage area here. It shows that a car can park there, so we're not taking away any parking necessarily. If we're installing speed humps, it does involve a sign, a warning sign of some kind. But we also included this picture here from Brookline, which is from Beverly Road, a project that was just completed last year. I wanted to show that because it's local, but also because we do want to include these kind of like leading up pavement markings that help warn people that there's a raised element ahead before they get to it. And then finally, the last goal is the community engagement, which I'm leaving pretty open because I think it's one of the most important parts to talk about, and I wanted to hear your take on it. A lot of what I just went through and proposed, I am kind of borrowing from what the city of Boston is trying and has been for, I think, about a year now. They basically are going for just speed humps. They are installing those speed humps on their streets that their data layers say need traffic calming, and they're not doing a process. They're not doing public meetings ahead of time and asking for permission. They're basically taking the tack that speed humps are safety and we don't need your permission to install them. I'm not necessarily suggesting that that's exactly what we do, but that is one part of the spectrum. And I think where we are right now with 4 meetings is probably the other part of the spectrum. And I want to talk about where we fall in the middle somewhere. But I wanted to include that just as food for thought and conversation. And this quote here is a quote from Mayor Wu about this topic. I believe that's my last slide. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Amy. So we've come a long way. So I know I talk about the old days quite a bit because I'm the old guy now, but 15, 20 years ago when we tried to get speed humps on Welland Road and I led that effort, it took an active town meeting because it was so radical trying to slow down cars near a school. If you can believe it. So this is great. And, it sounds like we're sort of trying to implement Vision Zero principles a lot into traffic calming using data. I would love to get us away eventually from the petition driven piece of this to just a data driven piece of it where, we know where the speeding is happening. And so we deploy our techniques, as appropriate, but I understand that we need a public process. And so I get it. I guess, I would say I work closely with the Boston Transportation Department folks in my day job, as I know you do. And, they're very passionate about this, and I know we are too. So the more that we can do to slow down traffic, and I sound like a broken record, but, it is just every time I'm out walking around, and I walk my dog twice a day, I just see cars doing things too quickly. I saw a car today blow through a red light on Washington Street at school in Aspinwall while kids were crossing, and the crossing guard jumped out. It happens, and you can't solve for the human factor in all cases, but we can certainly use design and use our techniques and use this stuff to slow down traffic as much as possible. And I think we should be doing a lot more of that. So I'm very grateful to you for bringing this up. I think the process is excessive. You know, we've heard, you and I were in a meeting earlier this week where we heard about process getting in the way of results. There needs to be a better balance, and in Brookline, we love process. I get it, but we need to sort of figure out a way to deploy these things a little bit quicker. I think what they're doing in Boston is really a great example. And the sort of speed pillows, I think, is a great opportunity to do it. And I'd be okay with a notification only approach, but I don't think it would work here. But I'll get off my soapbox now. Nancy, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so couple of comments and questions here. I'm unclear as to what the relevance will be of neighbor resident initiated projects. On the one hand, on page 3, you say that holding 4 public meetings is excessive for a resident initiated project, but it seems to me you're moving away from resident initiated, so that doesn't really make sense anymore, just that one statement. And I do want to clarify what resident initiated, what the significance will be. Because the only other mention that I see of this, I mean, obviously I see the whole point about, you know, using data in addition to resident initiated, or that's what I'm a little unclear of. On page 4 at the top, you talk about existing traffic calming requests will receive some amount of preference in the composite score. That sounds as if what's in the pipeline now, those resident requests will get some measure of preference, but it sounds as if you mean from now on, resident requests will be meaningless. They won't add anything, you know, they won't have any significance. So my first question is just, could you just clarify whether or not moving forward, there will be, you know, what the role will be of residents who get together and want to make a request?
Yeah, I'm certainly not trying to completely eliminate that that list from the analysis. The way that we're doing the composite score is still an open question. We have not fully figured that out, in part because I wanted to bring it to you guys and get kind of get your sense of the general approach that we're trying to take here before I, you know, crunched a bunch of numbers and tried to figure out exactly how to weight everything. You know, my sense is that there are a lot of requests on that list that have been there for a long time, and I want to respect those requests, and I want to, you know, listen to our residents, of course. So I do suspect that there would be some sort of favor given to those requests when compared to a location that was only arrived at through data. However, I also don't want to eliminate the possibility that a request that's, I mean, this has already happened, that when I was looking at our list of completed projects, there were requests that, you know, ended up with the conclusion was to not do anything, or at least not do traffic calming. And I think that's certainly a possibility with some of these requests, that maybe what they really need is some signage, or maybe, you know, we can't really prove that there's anything going on at all, or what, you know, there are a lot of different circumstances. So I don't want to say that every single request on there is going to get prioritized, because I don't think that's necessarily true.
Okay, but so I guess my comment then is I do think that we're not Boston. We don't purport to be Boston. And as much as difficult as the process is, I think Brookline does define itself by having a lot of public input. And I think people would be very unhappy if they felt like this was totally data-driven and that, their input, was not relevant at all. So I think, I'm hoping that going forward, I'm not saying that because residents make a request, something needs to be done. I mean, I'm perfectly comfortable with your using the data to go back to the residents and saying, I'm sorry, based on our standards, this doesn't qualify. That's perfectly fine. I'm not, but I do think that's important to keep that, some element of that. I also want to say in terms of, I'm a little confused about, first of all, you said 4 meetings, but when you put up the list of the priorities, I saw 2 neighborhood meetings and 1 public hearing before the Transportation Board. And I don't know where the 4th, I assume that public meeting before the Transportation Board is one of the 4, but I don't know where the other 4th is. I didn't see 4 meetings there. So I'm wondering where that meeting is.
Yes, there's the initial Transportation Board meeting, that's basically approving the carrying out of a project, essentially. Like the staff would bring the needs assessment to the Transportation Board after it's been given the go-ahead by the Department of Public Works Commissioner, and then the Transportation Board would vote on continuing the project. And then
Right, that's a hearing.
That's number 1. And then there's 2 public meetings, 2 neighborhood meetings, and then the 4th one is the Transportation Board approving the actual plan.
Okay, I get it. I get it. In connection, in terms of how many meetings, it seems to me maybe there's a difference between if staff is determined that some of these really lower level, less intrusive devices are going to be used, it makes sense to me that you don't necessarily need all of that process, although I don't really know what kind of neighborhood opposition there might be to some of these things. But sometimes I am assuming traffic calming needs something far more significant. Stop signs, for example. People get very passionate about where you put a stop sign, though, as opposed to some of these just like speed humps or cushions, which seem less intrusive. So I'm just suggesting that depending on what the type of measures that you think would be implemented, you might want to adjust the amount of process and the number of meetings with neighbors and hearings that you have.
I mean, a stop sign would be a perfect example of a request that where we say traffic calming is not what we would recommend. We would recommend stop sign, because stop signs, for one, states in the MUTCD is not not meant to be used as a measure of traffic calming. It's meant for prioritizing right of way at an intersection.
Okay, one final point and then I'll stop. In terms of the data-driven, I do not understand the final, within the census tract, income below the median and less than 20% of households with no access to vehicles. I don't understand why that is relevant in terms of where the dangerous intersections are. To the extent that you're minimizing neighborhood requests, then the fact that it's a lower income neighborhood, why is that relevant? That has no relevance. It's not like you're concerned about these people not having the social capital to make a request, because we're kind of minimizing the need for a request. And I have no idea what it means to say households with no access to a vehicle. Lots of people don't have cars, but they use Zip cars, they use Ubers. I just don't understand why that's at all relevant to which streets are most in need of traffic calming.
Yeah, because those are kind of proxies for more vulnerable populations, people who are more likely to be walking or biking if they don't have access to a car or if they're low income.
Okay, I just think you don't need that if you're using this other stuff. I just don't see that as a significant issue in a town like Brookline where, we have, every precinct has 15 town meeting members who every election year are canvassing and putting on doorbells, and people, I just don't see Brookline being as the kind of town where people with serious issues don't complain about it. I would not consider those to be particularly relevant indicators of where we should, how we prioritize what the dangerous crosswalks are. I mean, you've already got public housing as an area where, something close to public housing, that's already factored in. And to the extent that people live in dense neighborhoods, those are the areas where you're going to have the most pedestrians. And I think other people use those areas at all. But anyway, I'll stop. Just my comment.
Sure.
Nancy, well thought out as always. Thank you. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
So I want to pose that, and I want to delve a little bit more into the notification only approach, which I know is not exactly what you're proposing tonight or anything like that, but I want to think about it a little bit more. And then the very idea of how these come to exist as requests from neighborhoods and from residents as part of that notification only approach. If, say, data pushed you, as an example, to put speed humps or speed pillows in a particular location, let's say you notified them, the residents of that street, 30 days in advance. And let's say that notification included a tiny URL and a QR code that they could go to, and that brought them to a site that showed them what was going to happen, and gave them a box that they could write something in. And if they voiced a complaint, that would kind of push it the same way we pull things out of the consent agenda and move it to a board meeting. Is that something that is in the middle more? Is that kind of more of the middle of the road? And if no one in that 30-day period voices any concerns, then we just go ahead with the work. And I know there's more logistics to it. You have to actually line up the contractor to do the work and all that stuff. But I'm posing that as a theoretical example of something in the middle.
I think that has some merit to discuss for sure. I think I would want to discuss what the threshold, the number of complaints there would have to be. I wouldn't want to derail a traffic calming project just from one complaint necessarily. But I don't
know if it would derail it necessarily, but it would just slow it down.
Even so,
and similar to how if something's on the consent agenda here, if we feel like there's something that needs more discussion, we pull it out and have more discussion on it. It slows it down, which is not your general goal, but I would imagine more often than not, and maybe I'm wrong, based on Nancy's statement on the number of ability of folks to voice their opinions in Brookline. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine more often than not, these would go through without complaint. And maybe there's a threshold. I don't know. But,
I have no prediction there.
Yeah. Just
But
throwing
no,
it
I
out there
think
as
the
a
idea is-
potential middle ground, and maybe there's something in that range
Mhm.
that provides that public notification and opportunity to participate
Mhm.
Right.
in the public realm without going through meetings, and in fact almost brings it more local to them. They have direct communication with you.
Yep.
So I will stop there. For Brian.
Yeah, I mean,
flash at me.
it's a, sorry, I got a text. I'm not looking at the time. No, it's a tough balancing act, right? You want to hear from folks and you want to give folks the opportunity to weigh in. At the same time, you know, it's a short construction season in New England and we have to get stuff done and we have to get stuff out to bid. So you need to kind of expedite processes. So, you know, it's something that I think we all struggle with, how to balance that. And I don't know what the right answer is, but I do believe that we have a great staff here and a great team, and I'm happy to err on the side of their professionalism. But you know, that's certainly something that should be debated, not after a 3-hour meeting, but in the future. I also just want to Nancy, just to sort of respond a little bit to your comments, which I appreciate greatly. I hear all the time, and I'm sure you do too. We need to put a speed bump on this road. And I know from doing this that request is probably going to get denied because it's, you know, it's an arterial or a collector, or there's a lot of other issues. And so I do agree with you that we need a way to say no to petitions faster and sort of let them know why. But at the same time, I want to get us away from people feeling like they need to get gigantic petitions to submit to us with dozens and dozens and dozens of names, because right now our policy is 10. But I also feel like if there's, you know, if the accident reports say there's lots of crashes or incidents at a certain area, it shouldn't need a neighborhood request to be treated. You know, we should be proactively slowing down traffic out there. And I don't know how to balance that, honestly, right now. You know, we don't want to impose these things on neighborhoods that don't want them. At the same time, I've also pretty firmly believe that it's okay to slow down cars, even if there's local opposition, which I can't believe there would be for long. But yeah, it's complicated. And Amy, I guess I just want to wrap up by saying I appreciate you wrestling with these dynamics. There's no easy answers here. We do love our process in Brookline. I think, Nancy, you're absolutely right. People will find a way to voice their opinions. They always do. But I also understand, Amy, you know, we don't want to be imposing things on areas, especially areas where lots of low income folks live. So how to balance that is a tough one. I don't know the answer, but you know, I said earlier that we've come a long way, and we have, and I think it's great that we are at least, you know, talking about this stuff and trying to implement a way to install these things sort of in a systemic way that doesn't require going to town meeting. So that's a good thing, in my opinion. Anyone else have anything to add? Len, Shanali, Nancy, Jonathan?
Supportive of the
Chief.
process of going through and cleaning this up, updating it.
Thank you.
I agree. I think this is a good start, and I'm hoping that we can get things done more quickly, even if it means fewer meetings.
You don't like having 3-hour and 10-minute transportation board meetings? Can't imagine why.
Maybe I'll just add in that, you know, another thing to think about in terms of when you're reducing the public engagement in terms of like, yes, 4 meetings, I think for something like this is like crazy. But think about other ways of being able to replace that transparency. So like I'm going to go back to Brook Online. There's a lot of issues with that tool and the way that we respond to requests in it, but at least it's a way for people to like get involved, see what's in the queue, right, that they've put in, versus an email to the transportation board with this form. Is there a place where people are being able to sort of see the status of their request and like what stage it's at? It would be great to have some of that transparency. And I think that would take a lot of the burden off of having to have all of these meetings. Something.
Let me just add, you know, similar to the discussion we just had about the crosswalks up by the Minot Rose Garden. You know, those sort of came up because of the pavement condition of those streets necessitating work being done. You know, I guess I would suggest maybe another trigger could be, if we're out there doing repaving or resurfacing, we should also look at the crash, the accident information, and maybe see if at that time these treatments are warranted. And that could be another trigger to at least look at it and
That's
to go
absolutely-
through a process.
It's absolutely something we've been talking about. And one reason, you know, for wanting to get this moving is because we are having those conversations about the transportation mobility plan, like what should we be doing while we're repaving. So yeah, you're right on point with stuff we've been thinking about.
Cool.
And at some point, I'd like to see how you're doing that. Like, this is all the data we have. Here's how we're analyzing it. Here's why this area is more important than another. Like, I think it'd be interesting to see your process that you come up with.
Certainly.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with funds that are available in what buckets, and if other projects can be piggybacked upon. You know, it's not a clean, necessarily 100% clean process, so to speak, but yeah, I agree. If folks don't mind, let's turn to the public. There are 2 hands raised, and I appreciate these folks hanging around. So Eric Stone and John Bowman. Eric, when you're join us, unmute, make a comment. Love to hear from you.
It's me again. I'm still here. I again, town meeting member, precinct 8. Very grateful that we're revising this policy. My street has been on the queue in either 4th or 5th place for about 8 years and never moved up because squeakier wheels go above us. So we've never even had our first meeting, and we're into year 9 here in the wait. So all of us very grateful for a change in this, the idea of streamlining it. My personal take is that I really like the boldness of the Boston approach, that they've singled out speed humps in particular as a low cost, high safety, easy way to slow down cars on residential streets. You can just use speed data, throw a map on it, and rank order streets. It's really easy. And I personally would be supportive of that. I think you probably, to Nancy's point, you need some kind of, you know, other, like for neighborhoods or streets that want chicanes or planters or some consideration that's bigger or other than just speed humps. I think you need some kind of carve out still for community input. But if you take speed humps out of that mix, you're going to get a lot smaller queue on the more complex projects. You probably move into Vision Zero and complete streets projects on that front anyway. So I'm supportive. I know a bunch of my neighbors would be as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. John Bowman.
Thank you, John Bowman, town meeting member, precinct 10. I like the direction you're going with this, but I have one suspicion, and that is that the biggest pushback that you'll get from residents is from those who have longstanding traffic calming requests that get denied because they don't satisfy the specifics of the formula that you've chosen. So before you finalize the formula, I would suggest that you test it out to see how it ranks the streets that have been long-standing in the traffic calming queue and figure out which ones are ranked poorly and why they're ranked poorly, and give the residents of those streets the opportunity to provide public feedback, because there might be aspects that make their streets important for traffic calming that the formula doesn't capture. So that's just one suggestion that comes to my mind as I hear this conversation. Thank you.
Sorry for the background noise there, John. Thank you. David.
Thank you very much. David Trevette, Chair of Pedestrian Advisory Committee, speaking for myself, also town meeting member from Precinct 2. Generally supportive of this direction of really trying to streamline the process and to move forward. I'll be honest, public notification is a problem across the board in Brookline. We want to do it. We have trouble figuring out how to do it and how to get people to pay attention to it until after the fact when they're mad because they weren't notified, even though in fact they were notified. And the points that John Bowman just made, that stuff is really important. So I really, heed what he said. I have a specific question. I suspect most of the data out there in terms of traffic movement is about cars and motor vehicles. And so the question is where pedestrian data will come from. And again, we have the bill that they would come, just as in bicycles, bicyclists, you put in bicycle lanes and make your roads safer. You can basically incentivize people, give them more opportunity to ride. And the same thing really is true of pedestrians. The more we make our sidewalks inviting, the more people we can get to walk. So I don't need an answer right now, but I need to think about where you're getting pedestrian data. I know when we were in our first year of existence, we did our Longwood study. We actually stationed people at big intersections like Kent and Longwood, and we counted. And we came to the transportation board and they were amazed at 500 pedestrians going through an intersection in the course of an hour in the morning, and those numbers really matter. And so that's one of those things that if our committee can help with that kind of thing, getting out there and doing some counts to provide more data and basis, I certainly am willing to do it. I think other committee members would be as well. So that's something to consider, to draw on us to help with that data that, apart from the SUFA signs along in certain things, there's really nothing else out there for pedestrian data. As I worry about that glaring hole in the data picture.
Yeah, if I can respond.
Please.
Just, at least preliminarily, we were not considering using pedestrian or bicyclist volume data, in part because it is so sparse and because of the latent demand problem we've met, that I know you're familiar with. So we were trying to use other we were trying to use proxies essentially to get at where pedestrians and bicyclists are most likely to be. So land use, for example, all these different land uses, places that people want to be. That's where the low income and zero car household thing would come in. It's also true though that the streetlight software does have some pedestrian, I won't say counts, they call it pedestrian activity. It's a little murky as to exactly what it means and how helpful it is, but I think I think it's a possibility to use something like that, at least similar to the traffic volume that it has. Might not be good for saying there's 500 pedestrians that showed up here in this intersection today, but it could say that there's more pedestrians on this street than there is on that street, something like that. It's more about the relative volumes than the actual number. That makes sense.
Okay, so it sounds like you'll pay attention to things like the senior center, the teen center, town hall, schools, parks, areas around those to make those particularly, okay, good. Yep. That's a good focus. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think one of the goals is to take more of that stuff into consideration than squeaky wheel. If you know what I mean. So we have to, I don't think anyone has figured out that right balance, but we're going to try to do better.
Mhm.
Okay. Amy, you think you got enough feedback? You good?
Yeah, yeah. Just as next steps, the commissioner is obviously really interested in these changes and hearing from what you guys had to say. So I see that talking with her about, what we talked about tonight, and my ideas and stuff, and as the next step, and, seeing what we come up with there. And, you'll hear from us with some updates soon.
Great. Look forward to it. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our final item, other business. I just wanted to note very quickly, had a very good discussion Monday with most of the transportation division staff, including Dan Murphy, I think on his first day, along with select board members Sandman and Paul Warren. The commissioner was there, and we talked about the need to find a better way to sort of prioritize how we approach our complete streets and our traffic calming and all the stuff we've been discussing tonight. So it's an ongoing discussion. And the Amy fought very valiantly in the corner of, we have to also take into consideration paths of travel to important community places of interest like parks and the senior center and the teen center and schools and everything like that. So thank you, Amy. So it's being worked on, it's being considered. I think we need to sort of all accept that we can't do everything everywhere all at once. We are resource constrained, and so we have to deploy our resources where it makes the most sense at the time and sort of get the biggest efficiencies. So that discussion is ongoing and continuing, and it relates to the budget, and it relates to town meeting, and it relates to a bunch of other people. So it's not just the Brookline, it's not just the transportation board discussion. It's a much broader townwide discussion. But it seems like the thing that almost everyone can agree on is the need to slow down cars and trucks around where they live, around where they congregate, around where their kids go, around where their parents go, around where people go. So, as long as we have that as our North Star, we'll be okay. Nancy.
Was there any discussion about the condition of the streets?
Yeah.
I usually don't drive. And one reason that I resist this sort of, looking at poverty levels to see where people are walking. I have access to 2 cars, but I almost never drive. I walk everywhere in Brookline. I am a big pedestrian, but for personal reasons, I've had to drive a lot in the last week, and I am just appalled at the condition of Brookline streets. And it's not like from year to year it changes. It just seems like it's always bad. There are certain streets where it's just always really bad. So is that part of the conversation?
Oh, that was the genesis of the conversation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you didn't specifically mention that. So I was just.
Well, no, there's a sentiment that by doing complete streets, we do less pavement maintenance and improvements. And so, that may or may not be true, but we need to figure out ways to do more to prevent our roads from falling into a state where they can't be maintained anymore and must be replaced. It's just not cost effective. So, a little bit of maintenance along the way goes a long way to extending the useful life of our pavement. We're seeing this on Washington Street. And so, figuring out what and how to prioritize that. I don't think anyone has figured it out perfectly, especially in the Northeast. But it's certainly something we're trying to do because it's everybody. It's not just streets, it's sidewalks and it's intersections, and it's the infrastructure that we all use every day. So, I agree with you that we need to find more resources, and I am very grateful for the resources that we've been given from the voters through recent overrides. We have a little bit more money. I'm not sure that's going to continue forever, but we need to demonstrate to the public that with the additional resources we have, we can do more. And so I completely agree with you. We need to do a lot more. And the commissioner and I are talking about this a lot. You know, how we can deploy our existing in-house resources better, how we can use our on-call contracts better. There's a lot to do there.
Thank you.
And Dan Murphy has joined us to tackle these issues. And Dan, I hope you don't leave after this meeting.
No. Is this typical?
It is, unfortunately,
Yeah,
we
that's
try to
okay.
keep them shorter, and
It's
we need to
okay.
do a better job.
It's good to hear all the thoughts.
Nobody wants to be doing this at 10 o'clock at night. So, okay, any other?
Brian, I'll keep it. I'll keep it.
Policy discussion.
Yeah.
What is that?
30 seconds. Basically, we have until September to adhere to the select board's new policy for Zoom meetings. So we don't have to change anything until September, but it does mean that we won't be operating under a panelist attendee platform anymore, but we do have the ability to control Q&A. So it can be a longer discussion another time, but we're good for the time being.
What could possibly go wrong?
Everything.
I do want to have an in-person meeting, and May or June. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to pick which one, but we need to have an in-person meeting. We've never met in person, this current board. So figure it out. May or June, we're going to come and we're going to meet, and it's going to be epic. It'll be hybrid, of course. All right. Any other items? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Nancy moves to adjourn. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
See you next
Thank you
time.
all.